Chapter 703. Zhang Yan could tell that sect leader Qiao was taking the initiative to bring up the past to show his goodwill. He smiled and said, "When I settled down on Mount Shenwu, I searched everywhere for elixirs. When King Ying found out, he gave me a lot of them. I heard that he is now in prison, so I wanted to ask sect leader Qiao for a favor and release him." Sect leader Qiao was startled and asked with a strange expression, "About King Ying?" Madame Zhao's beautiful eyes suddenly turned and she glared at him. Sect leader Qiao's face showed some awkwardness. He coughed and said, "I can make the decision. When I return to the sect, I will give Jinren an explanation." The royal family of Chu was the Xiang family. They were the descendants of the founding ancestor Jinzhong. However, the current Chu emperor was a female emperor. After the death of the late Chu emperor, she usurped the throne as the Empress Dowager. In order to consolidate her power, she went to sect leader Qiao to recommend herself. She was intelligent and had a unique fragrance. She was also a stunning beauty, so she was quite favored. But at the same time, sect leader Qiao's favored concubines were jealous. Since they could not do anything to her openly, they secretly tried to provoke the princes to overthrow and execute them. But who would have thought that after the matter was leaked, sect leader Qiao would use the excuse that the people of the sect were not allowed to influence the situation of the Chu kingdom as an excuse to punish a few of his concubines. The sixth prince was also implicated because of this matter and was imprisoned. Zhang Yan was not interested in the inside story. Seeing that sect leader Qiao agreed, he cupped his hands and said, "Then I thank you in advance." Sect leader Qiao hurriedly said, "It's nothing. It's just a small matter. How can it be worthy of Jinren's thanks?" At this time, a disciple boarded the carriage and whispered in Elder Bai's ear. Elder Bai's face lit up and he turned to sect leader Qiao and said, "Senior brother sect leader, just now a disciple came to report that he saw 2 rays of light from the Xianyue sect's altar leaving the mountain. They seem to be cultivators from outside the sect who were recruited earlier. This shows that after Rong Juanzhong's defeat, the Xianyue sect is already in a state of panic. They can no longer control the situation. I am willing to try to persuade them to surrender so that there will be no more unnecessary killing." Oh. Sect leader Qiao was slightly surprised, but after thinking about it, he felt that it was reasonable. After a moment of silence, he said, "Junior brother going alone is a bit inappropriate. Junior brother Lin, you go with junior brother Bai. Remember to be careful." Elder Lin, who was at the side, stood up and acknowledged the order. The 2 of them came out of the banquet, bowed to him, and used their escape technique to fly to the other side. At this time, Elder Yen stroked his beard and said, "Sect master, even if Xianyu admits defeat, he won't give in easily. He will definitely use some tricks." Sect leader Qiao nodded and said, "Let's wait for the 2 junior brothers to return first." After about 4 hours, Elder Lin and Elder Bai came back. When their figures landed, Elder Bai quickly walked to the front of the carriage. His expression was slightly excited as he bowed and said, "Congratulations, sect master. Xianyu cult is willing to surrender to my Zhongtai." When sect leader Qiao heard this, he was slightly dazed. Then, he suddenly stood up from his seat. After a few breaths, he slowly sat down again. At this moment, his heart was in turmoil. The 2 sects were one. For thousands of years, what the previous sect masters wanted to do but couldn't was done by him. He tried to make his voice calm as he gripped the armrest tightly. He leaned forward and asked, "What conditions does Xianyu have?" Elder Bai gritted his teeth and said, "Yang Shuyong didn't say much, but he is also cunning. He actually expelled the 8 protectors and elder envoys from the cult." Sect leader Qiao was stunned. His thoughts turned and he realized Xianyu's intention. He clearly wanted to find an excuse to preserve their vitality and at the same time, not let Zhongtai occupy more celestial cities. However, to everyone's surprise, he wasn't angry. Instead, he said, "That's good. Sage he is still here, so we don't have to force Xianyu too much." Xianyu cult had a total of 6 Yuanying second-tier cultivators. Other than the Golden Spirit Elder who was killed by Zhang Yan, there were still 5. With Zhong Tai's current strength, even if he swallowed them all, it would definitely cause internal instability. Instead of that, it was better to let them go. As for the celestial cities, they couldn't occupy them with their current manpower. They could only think of a way to take them back later. Elder Bai, however, showed a worried expression and said, "Sect leader, I'm afraid that after they occupy the celestial cities, they will collude with the 3 sects of the south." Sect leader Qiao smiled and said, "Junior brother, the cultivation of external objects and celestial cities are secondary. The most important thing is those Taoist books and records. As long as I, Zhong Tai, have 200 to 300 years, I will be able to make up for all the inadequacies in cultivation methods and divine arts. At that time, why would I be afraid of others?" Elder Yan also said, "That's right. If we only focus on those external objects, we will be neglecting the essentials. The key to cultivation methods is the foundation of our foothold in Dongsheng." There was one more thing that they didn't say. If Zhong Tai won, the sect would obtain fate. Relying on the sect's treasure, the 5 symbols white incense tripod, they could prolong Sage Zhang's life. With this heavenly abode sage guarding the sect, they wouldn't be afraid of the 3 sects of the south. At that moment, Zhang Yan spoke. His gaze turned and he smiled, "Sect leader Qiao, since Xian Yu admitted defeat in this battle, I should take my leave." Sect leader Qiao was shocked. "Sage is leaving?" Zhang Yan said, "I have been out for a long time. As the leader of Hanyuan, there are still many matters in the sect that need to be dealt with." Sect leader Qiao thought for a moment, then took out a jade token from his waist and said, "Since Master Zhang has already decided to leave, then I won't hold you back any longer. This is the token of my sect leader. You can take whatever you want from the storehouse." After handing it over and waiting for Zhang Yan to receive it, he left his seat and stood up. He cupped his hands and said, "When this matter is over, I will set up a banquet at the Golden Bell platform. I hope that Jinren will do me the honor." Zhang Yan smiled and nodded. He returned the courtesy and said, "I will definitely come." According to the rules of the battle, other than the many spiritual objects, Zhong Tai still had to give him a few celestial cities. However, Xian Yu had just arrived and there were many things to deal with. Now was not the time to discuss it. He believed that Zhong Tai wouldn't neglect this matter. After he kept the jade tablet, he leaped into the sky and flew away on a cloud under everyone's respectful gaze. After he left, Madame Zhao suddenly felt a vibration in her pouch. A pearl flew out and turned into a white light that flew into the sky. Sect leader Qiao's gaze froze. He said, "Madam, is it the person from the sea?" Madame Zhao said, "Yes. But now that he has left, there's nothing left to do." Sect leader Qiao was silent for a while. He slowly shook his head and said, "I've been waiting for the map of the North Sea for a long time. This matter won't end so easily." Elder Yan said in a deep voice, "It is indeed a precaution." Elder Bai said, "Just now, I'm at Xian Yu's place. I heard Chunyu Ji talk about Sage Shang. It seems that this person's background isn't normal. That year, Sage Shen Baishuang killed a protector of Xian Yu. Sage he didn't allow the disciples to seek revenge. This is very thought-provoking." Elder Yan's eyes suddenly lit up. He said in a serious tone, "Sect leader, we must rope this person in at all costs." Sect leader Qiao's expression also became serious. He said to Madame Zhao, "Madam, immediately return to the mountain and gather all the spiritual medicine that Sage Shang needs. At the same time, send people to the 3 southern sects to search. The more the better. You can use talismans and pills to exchange. It doesn't matter if you suffer some losses." Madame Zhao said in surprise, "Husband, why are you in such a hurry?" Elder Yan said meaningfully, "Madam, if I, Zhong Tai, can rope this person in with spiritual medicine, others might be able to as well." Madame Zhao was enlightened. She immediately stood up and said seriously, "I will return to the mountain now. I don't want to delay husband's matter." Outside Sleeping Star Mountain, Xing Fuliu saw that his body was pressed down to the point that he couldn't move. This situation was definitely because he had fallen into the heaven and earth confinement technique. He secretly looked at the appearance of the person in front of him. He felt that he looked familiar. After thinking for a while, he put on a smile and probed, "Are you Hui Xian Elder's disciple, Sage Chu?" "I am Xing Fuliu. During the Fengxiang sword worship ceremony, I also drank tea and discussed Tao with your sect's Taoist Wang Guangyuan." Chu Chengji said lightly, "Don't try to get acquainted. Let me ask you too, what happened in the mountain? Tell me quickly." Xing Fuliu pondered in private. This was not a secret. When the assembly was over, the world would know about it. Thus, there was no need for him to hide anything. He told Chu Chengji everything that happened in the mountain just now. After listening to him, Chu Chengji was stunned for a while. He said in disbelief, "You said that Rong Juanzhong was defeated by that Taoist Zhang?" Xing Fuliu nodded repeatedly and said, "That's right, that's right. Taoist Chu didn't see it, but that Taoist Zhang's Taoist techniques and mystical skills are tyrannical and peerless. In just a short time, he killed over 20 fellow nascent soul Taoists and forced the rest to hide in the forbidden formation, not daring to come out. This lowly Taoist believes that Zhong Tai is the winner this time." Chu Chengji still didn't believe it. Zhang Yan's battle achievements were too shocking. He pointed at Chain Yangzi and said, "You, tell me. Is he telling the truth?" Chain Yangzi said timidly, "Priest Xing is not exaggerating. If Priest Xing and I didn't hide in time, we would have ended up the same way." Chu Chengji's gaze stopped on the two of them. He stared back and forth as if trying to discern the truth. At this moment, he heard a voice beside his ear, "Disciple doesn't need to ask anymore. Let them leave." In a cave not far away, Luo Dongchuan heard their conversation clearly. He pounded his chest and stamped his feet. "It's this Zhang Yan who ruined our Python tribe's plans again." Hui Xian Elder frowned. If this matter was not settled, the Python tribe might not fulfill their promise. He said, "There's always a way out. Taoist Luo, just think of another countermeasure." Luo Dongchuan looked over and grabbed Hui Xian's arm. He said anxiously, "Taoist Hui Xian, do you have a good plan to teach me?" Hui Xian Grand Master said in a deep voice, "The three southern sects are plotting against the north of Dongsheng. I have quite a number of acquaintances in the three southern sects and can try to do something about it." When Luo Dongchuan heard this, he let go in disappointment. How can the three southern factions be used so easily? Hui Xian Elder said, "Of course not. Rumor has it that under the Dragon Pillar, there's a Taoist book written by Taoist Master Demi. Since Xian Yu was defeated, it should belong to Zhong Tai. If we can really obtain it, maybe Zhong Tai can produce another Paradise Master." Before the situation was settled, the three southern factions sat on the mountain and watched the tigers fight. They were not willing to get involved in this mess. "Now I feel that they will not allow Zhong Tai to grow." Luo Dongchuan said in surprise, "There's really a Taoist book written by Taoist Master Demi under the Dragon Pillar?" It was a book written by an ascended Jinren. He couldn't help but be tempted. Hui Xian Elder glanced at him and said, "So what if there is, so what if there isn't? It's enough to provoke the three southern factions. However, your tribe needs to find a way to move that Taoist Zhang away. With this person obstructing us, it will be difficult to succeed." Luo Dongchuan chuckled but did not reply. Even though he deeply hated Zhang Yan for ruining the Python clan's plan this time, he didn't lose his head and look for trouble with Zhang Yan. Now, he could only wait for his clansmen to invite the person that could restrain Zhang Yan. Chapter 704. After Zhang Yan left Sleeping Star Mountain, he first sent a letter to Zhang Boyan to inform him of the details. Then, he found a hilltop and used the earth escape technique to enter the belly of the mountain. He opened up a cave and meditated for a while. The mana he used in the fight was fully recovered. Then, he came out of the cave in high spirits and flew towards Hope Voice Mountain at lightning speed. Unlike when he came here, he traveled very fast with his sword. After only one day, he returned to the capital of Chu, Daeong, and landed in the inn. The result of the fight in Sleeping Star Mountain had not been announced yet. The servant of the inn saw that he went to Sleeping Star Mountain with other cultivators, but now he came back alone. He couldn't help but feel strange, but because of his low status, he didn't dare to ask. Zhang Yan arrived at the hall. Just now, he sat down. Suddenly, he heard footsteps. He looked up and saw Zhao Yang walking into the hall. When the latter saw him, he was surprised and bowed. "Master is back." Disciple greets master. Zhang Yan helped him up and asked with a smile, "When I went to the dragon pillar with your master, I heard him say that you have to practice a spirit-dispelling technique within a month. If you fail, you will be punished by being in isolation for 30 years. Have you mastered it?" Zhao Yang sighed, "This technique is really difficult to practice. I spent 40 days and just now mastered it. I just came out of isolation the day before yesterday. I think I will be punished by my master when I go back." Zhang Yan looked at his dejected look and couldn't help but laugh. He changed his mind and said, "You came at the right time. Is the manager of the Ying King's residence, Xiang Zhanfu, still in the inn?" Zhao Yang replied, "This person is still obediently staying here. These few days, he hasn't gone anywhere else." Zhang Yan nodded and said, "Good, go and inform him. As for the matter of the Ying King, I have already asked sect leader Qiao for mercy. He will be released in a few days. Tell him to wait patiently." Zhao Yang vaguely knew that this person seemed to be involved with a rare treasure. He bowed respectfully and said, "Yes, disciple will go now." After he left, Zhang Yan then instructed the maidservant, "Go find the manager of this place." After about the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, a middle-aged cultivator wearing a square scarf stepped into the hall. He bowed and asked, "Did Taoist priest call me?" Zhang Yan asked, "I have something to ask you. Who is in charge of the mountain now?" The steward answered honestly, "The sect leader and several elders are not in the mountain, so the madams are in charge of the mundane affairs." Zhang Yan asked again, "I have the sect leader's communication talisman with me, so I need to go to the storehouse to get some spiritual objects. Where should I go? Who should I look for?" The steward thought for a moment and said, "If you're looking for scriptures, you should go to the Silver Nose Palace. If one wanted to find rare treasures, they would have to go to the Oxhorn Hall." These two places were next to each other. They were all on Hope Sound Mountain's Rhinoceros Peak. The guard is the second disciple of the sect leader, Taoist Quan Kong. After Zhang Yan asked about it, he nodded his head and dismissed the steward. Then, he rode the wind and clouds and headed towards Rhinoceros Peak. Not long after, he arrived in front of the main hall at the bottom of the peak. A Taoist steward came forward and bowed, "Taoist priest, please excuse me. Our sect leader has yet to return from the Dragon Pillar battle, so the hall is not accepting guests these days. Please forgive me." Zhang Yan said, "I came here on the promise of your sect leader. I'm here to get some spiritual herbs." The Taoist steward asked suspiciously, "Do you have proof?" Zhang Yan took out a jade tablet and showed it to him. He said, "This talisman was personally given by your sect leader." The Taoist steward stretched out his hand and wanted to take a closer look, but after hearing this, his body shook and he quickly retracted his hand. He widened his eyes and looked at it for a while. He smiled bitterly and said, "This talisman looks real, but this is a serious matter. I'm a lowly Taoist, so I can't make the decision. I need to ask the hall leader to check it, please forgive me." Zhang Yan nodded his head and smiled, "You can go ahead, I will wait here." The Taoist steward called for 2 Taoist children and ordered them to take care of Zhang Yan. He then hurriedly ran into the inner hall. In less than the time it takes for an incense to burn, he returned with a silver-haired Daoran. Doran's expression was solemn. He walked up slowly and carefully looked at Zhang Yan. He then bowed and said, "I Quan Song, is this Shinran holding my Zhongtai communication talisman?" When Zhang Yan heard that he was Quan Song, he passed the jade tablet over and said, "Hall leader Quan Song, please take a look." When Quan Song Daoran saw the talisman, he knew that it was the sect leader's personal item. But after he looked at it, he said calmly, "My eyes are not good, so I can't tell if it's real or fake. I need to check it carefully, please don't be offended." Zhang Yan knew that this matter involved the sect's treasury, so it was reasonable for Daoran to be more cautious. He smiled and said, "Daoist Quan Song, you're too serious. This is reasonable." Quan Song Daoran took out a golden mirror and looked at the talisman. He then excused himself and went to the back of the hall. He said to a disciple, "Go and tell Lady Lian that someone has the sect leader's personal talisman and wants to take something from the treasury. Ask her how to deal with it." When Zhong Tai's sect went to Sleeping Star to fight, all the Yuanying cultivators in the sect went out. Only the second-generation disciples were left to guard the mountain gate. But with Zhenrenzheng overseeing this place, no one dared to cause trouble. The sect was filled with common things. Sect leader Qiao was worried about outsiders, so he let a few concubines take care of it. Among the concubines, Lian Murong's cultivation was the highest. A few days ago, she heard that she broke through the Yuanying realm. Quan Song knew that she was narrow-minded and wanted to please her, so he sent a disciple to ask her. Hope Voice Mountain, Warm Furnace Pavilion. Melodious sounds of the zither came from inside. The sound was pleasing to the ear, overlapping like jade waves piling up snow, soothing the heart. When the song ended, Elder Yu clapped his hands and said, "Lady Lian has entered the Yuanying realm this time. I didn't think that Lady Lian's zither skills would also improve greatly." Lian Nyangzi was extremely happy to hear his praise. She waved her hand and said with a light smile, "That's all thanks to Elder Yu for sending over that ship full of good gang heroes. Elder Yu, I will remember your good deeds." Elder Yu looked at her, but he deliberately sighed and said, "It's a pity, a pity." Lady Lian asked curiously, "What's a pity?" Yu Daoran said, "It's a pity for me." If Lady Lian had become a Yuanying earlier, she could also be like Madame Zhao, going to the Dragon Pillar to fight and share sect leader Qiao's worries. At the mention of Madame Zhao, Lady Lian snorted softly and said, "Zhao Ru is not a citizen of Chu, but because she gave birth to a good son, Master took a fancy to her. But now that I've also achieved Yuanying, I'm not inferior to her." As the two were talking, a maidservant entered the hall and reported, "Lady, Daoist Quan Song sent a disciple over, saying that he has something important to discuss with you." Quan Song was sect leader Qiao's second disciple, but this person's aptitude was not good. He had cultivated for hundreds of years, but he was only at the first level of core transformation. However, he was from a large clan of Chu and was related to her clan by marriage, so Lady Lian didn't want to offend him. She said, "Send that person in." After a while, a disciple entered the hall. After greeting, he didn't wait for any questions and immediately stated the purpose of his visit. Lady Lian said in surprise, "Master's personal talisman. Your master must not be mistaken." The disciple said, "Master has already checked the talisman, it's real." Lady Lian asked doubtfully, "Since he came to take something from the storehouse, why didn't he send a disciple from our sect? What's the background of that person? Did you find out?" Quan Song replied, "When I came, I already found out that this person's surname is Zhang, and he's the Hanyuan sect leader of Westchen Wutsangzhu Peak. He was recruited by Immortal Du for this Dragon Pillar meeting. You're saying that this person is Daoist Zhang of Shenwu Mountain?" Lady Lian was surprised at first, then a trace of coldness appeared in her beautiful eyes. She snorted and thought to herself, "That Daoist Zhang dared to humiliate me back then, and now that he's in my hands, I might as well find a reason to deal with him and vent my anger." However, that talisman was sect leader Qiao's personal talisman, so she couldn't stop him. No matter how she thought about it, she couldn't think of a way, so she looked down and asked, "Elder Yu, what do you think we should do about this?" Elder Yu knew what she was thinking, but he said, "I'm just an outsider, how can I discuss the matters of your sect?" Lady Lian said unhappily, "I told you to say it, so just say it." Elder Yu said meaningfully, "Now that it's the time for the Dragon Pillar meeting, it's an unusual time. Lady Lian needs to investigate for a few more days, in case there's a mistake in the future and it'll be hard to explain to the sect. Lady Lian's beautiful eyes brightened, and she instructed the disciple, go back and tell Quan Song, whatever that Taoist Zhang asks for, just say that you can't find it, push it back today, push it back tomorrow, push it back tomorrow. In short, don't ask him to find it, do you understand? The disciple agreed and left the pavilion. At this moment, Lady Lian's heart was perturbed. The person who held the sect leader's talisman was like the sect leader himself, and secretly tampering with things would be a heavy crime. But she thought again, she was now a Yuanying cultivator, and sect leader Qiao couldn't wait to protect her, so why would he fuss over such a small matter? Even if he asked about it later, she just had to insist that she didn't know about it. It didn't take long for the disciple to return to Rhinoceros Peak, and he told Quan Song everything Lady Lian had said without missing a word. This Daoren immediately understood. He strolled out of the hall and walked up to Zhang Yan, bowing respectfully. Taoist Zhang, the talisman has been verified, and it's indeed the sect leader's talisman. I've been negligent before, and I hope you can forgive me. What item does Taoist Zhang want this time? Zhang Yan smiled and took out the list of gifts he had brought with him. Quan Song took the list and glanced at it. His brows furrowed deeply, and he sighed endlessly. Zhang Yan glanced at him and asked, what is it? Does Taoist Quan Song have any difficulties? Quan Song waved the list and said apologetically, I'm sorry that Taoist Zhang knows. The storehouse is very large and these spirit herbs are usually not used by anyone, so I don't know where they are. I can't find them in a short time, so I'm afraid I'll have to ask Taoist Zhang to wait for a few more days. Zhang Yan asked, how many days do I have to wait? Quan Song shook his head and said, it's hard to say, hard to say. If it's quick, 1 or 2 days, at most 5 or 6 days. If I can't find them, 10 to 15 days is also possible. Zhang Yan smiled faintly and said, when I came out, sect leader Qiao said that with this talisman, I can take whatever I want from the storehouse. Since the spirit herbs are hard to find, then there's no need to trouble Taoist Zhang, I'll just take them all. When he finished, he shook the talisman, and in an instant, all the layers of restrictions on the hall were suppressed. Then, he shook his shoulder, and a ray of light rose from his back. In an instant, water surged, and the whole rhinoceros hall was swept into it. Then, he turned into a ray of rainbow and flew into the sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Quan Song was dumbfounded, looking at the empty hilltop. After a long while, he let out a loud cry and fell to the ground with his face up. P.S. Chapter 705. After Zhang Yan left the Rhinoceros Peak, he returned to the pavilion to pick up Zhao Yang and the stone spirit Xiaoying. Then, he flew towards the north. 8 days later, he entered the Shenwu mountain. After another 2 hours, Cangzhou Peak was already in sight. There were several disciples on duty at the gazebo at the peak. One of them saw a sword flying out from the clouds and heading towards them. His eyes widened and he shouted, the sect master is back. The sect master is back. Quick, go and sound the bell. Not long after, the sound of the bell could be heard both inside and outside the sect. At this time, Chu Mu ran, Wen Liang, and Zhao Gu were all in the cave doing their morning rituals. When they heard the news, they were shocked, knowing that Zhang Yan had returned to the mountain. They quickly put down what they were doing and flew up the mountain to greet him. After Zhang Yan entered the mountain, he first sent out a gust of wind to send Xiao Yang and Xiaoying back. Then, he went up the mountain. As soon as he stood still on the mountain top, a ray of golden light shone towards him. He turned his head and saw that the old moon was about to recede but had not yet receded. The morning sun was spitting out from the horizon, the first rays of the morning sun shone down on the 10,000 mountains. It looked magnificent, imposing and majestic, inspiring people's heart. He stood on the peak with his hands behind his back. When he saw this scene, the words changing with each passing day appeared in his mind. In the battle at Dragon Pillar Mountain, he defeated Xian Yu with his divine arts and arcane power. Although he was unparalleled for a while, many of his techniques were seen by others. There was no divine art in the world that could not be broken. It all depended on how one dealt with it. If someone wanted to deal with him, they would definitely find a way to break it. As the saying goes, when the tide rises, the boat rises. He thought that if he relied on the methods in front of him and did not change, he might be able to ensure that he would not lose in the short term. But as time passed, those who were diligent would always find the right way. He also had to deal with it. The best way was to use his own cultivation method as a foundation and derive another method. He pondered for a while and put this matter aside for the time being. He walked into the cave. After 100 steps, he arrived at a stone residence. A 16 or 17-year-old youth was meditating inside. He heard footsteps. When he opened his eyes, he couldn't help but say happily, "Master." He jumped down from the rock and ran over, kneeling on the ground and kowtowing. "This disciple is Fu Baoxing." "Greetings, Master." Zhang Yan raised his hand. He smiled and said, "Get up, disciple." Fu Baoxing responded and stood up. Zhang Yan took a few glances and saw that his disciple's eyes were clear. It was obvious that the divine light had improved a lot since he left. He subconsciously nodded his head. He must have felt something just now, so he said, "My disciple, you are the youngest among my disciples. You should be at the age where you want to play and be active. However, in the next few hundred years, there will be a great calamity in the world. Everyone will be caught in it. If you want to avoid this calamity, you must not slack off." Fu Baoxing said seriously, "Yes, Master. Your disciple will not dare to disappoint you." At this moment, the child at the door said, "Master, Chu, Wen, and Zhao Daoist are outside asking for an audience." Zhang Yan said, "Understood." He gave Fu Baoxing a few more words of encouragement before walking out. Soon, he arrived at the front hall of the cave. Chu Mu and the other two were already there. When they saw him, they quickly came up to greet him. Chu Mu was the first to bow and said, "We are very happy to hear that sect head Shixiang has returned." Zhang Yan nodded and said, "You don't have to be so courteous. Sit down and talk." The three waited for him to sit on the couch before sitting at the side. Wen Liang was an impatient person. As soon as he sat down, he asked, "Sect head Shixiang, which sect won the Battle of the Dragon Pillars?" Chu Mu Ran and Zhao Ge both looked over. No matter which sect won the Battle of the Dragon Pillars, the situation in Dongxing would change. Although Mount Shenwu was far away in the north, there were many sects and schools on the mountain that were still under the bell platform in name, so they would inevitably be affected. Zhang Yan smiled and said, "There is no need for me to tell you. You will know in a few days." He didn't mention this matter, so the three didn't ask anymore. They could only talk about the mundane affairs of the sect. However, there was nothing important in the sect during this period of time, so they took their leave after talking for a while. The three rode the clouds down the peak. Wen Liang was puzzled and asked, "Senior Chu, what does sect head Shixiang mean by this?" He didn't even explain it clearly. Chu Mu thought for a while and said, "I saw Senior Shixiang's expression. He is calm and at ease. This matter should be good and not bad." Zhao Ge was a calm person and said, "Since sect head Shixiang said that we will know the result in a few days, then we don't need to waste our time and guess randomly. Let's just wait patiently." 20 days later. A gold-plated flying carriage with eagle wings came to Mount Shenwu. Because it was blocked by the restrictive formation outside the mountain, it could only land outside the mountain. A deep and magnetic voice came from the carriage, "Manager Fu, have we arrived?" Xiang Zhanfu came to the back of the carriage and said through the curtains, "Your Highness Ing Wang has arrived at the Shenwu mountain, but we don't know when this place was set up with a restrictive spell. It is difficult for the flying carriage to pass through. I have already asked Celestial Master Hu to find out the reason. We have arrived at Mount Shenwu." The curtain was lifted and a man in a long robe came out. He had bright eyes and a feathered crown on his head. His beard was carefully trimmed. Looking at the majestic mountain in front of him, he had a look of admiration in his eyes. He said, "Beautiful like the clouds, majestic like the sky, worthy of the name of Mount Shinwu." At this time, a beautiful woman wearing a fox fur coat came out of the carriage and put a cloak on him. She said, "Your Highness, the wind is strong outside. Don't catch a cold." Footsteps were heard and a Taoist walked over. Xiang Zhanfu went up and asked, "Taoist Master Hu, how is it?" Taoist Master Hu ignored him and bowed to the Ying King. He said, "Your Highness, the restrictive formation in front of us was set up by the order of Jinren Zhang from the peak of Mount Shinwu. After I reported my intention, the formation has been removed and we can continue on our way." The Ying King looked at the mountain in the distance and shook his head. He said, "Thanks to Jinren Zhang's help, I was able to escape from being roped in. Since I have come to express my gratitude, I will go on foot now to show my sincerity." The woman exclaimed, "Your Highness." The Taoist was stunned. Although they were already in front of the Divine House Mountain, they were still thousands of miles away from Tsangzhu Peak. Moreover, they were surrounded by lofty mountains and natural moats. There were some places where there were no roads at all. Although this prince also took pills to refine his qi, he could not compare to a cultivator. If they traveled by land, who knew how long it would take to reach their destination? Xiang Zhanfu advised in a low voice, "Your Highness is here not only to pay your respects to the mountain but also because of Madame Zhao's request. It is not your Highness's matter alone. We cannot delay it." The Ying King was reminded by him and hesitated for a while. He finally gave up on the idea and said, "Manager Fu is right. We cannot delay the proper business." Xiang Zhanfu heaved a sigh of relief. He said, "Please return to the carriage, Your Highness." The Ying King nodded silently. He took the woman's hand and sat back in the carriage. He put down the curtain. Taoist Master Hu took out a talisman and shook it in his hand. The flying carriage took off from the ground and flew towards Mount Shinwu. Hongyu Mountain, Broadwing Peak, Soaring Sky Hall. The head of Fengxiang Sword School, Chen Yuan, sat on the jade crane platform. He was in his 40s and wore a black robe and a black crown. He looked solemn and dignified. At this moment, he was reading a letter. His eyes were as cold as ice. None of the 5 elders in the hall dared to make a sound. After some time, he shook the letter in his hand and looked down the platform. He asked, "This priest Zhang is only at the 2nd level of Yuanying, but he was able to defeat Rong Juanzhong and killed more than 20 cultivators from Xianyu. I wonder what kind of person he is. Why haven't I heard of him before?" The great elder, Long Jingcheng, who was below the platform, said, "I have asked around. This person is the head of a small sect in West Godly House. He is not a cultivator from Dongsheng. He came from another continent. There are rumors that he is from the same sect as priest Shen Baishuang from hundreds of years ago." Shen Baishuang? Chen Yuan thought for a while and said, "I have heard of this person before." He tilted his head and looked down at an elder with messy hair that almost covered his face. He said, "Elder Su, you seem to have met this person for a while." The elder's body moved. 2 rays of light shone out from under his messy hair. He said in a deep voice, "Yes, we met once before." A young cultivator opposite him sneered, "Senior brother sect head, you don't know. That Shen Baishuang has no relationship with our sect. We have some conflicts." Chen Yuan was surprised, "Conflicts? Why don't I know?" The young cultivator said, "In the past, priest Shen searched for spiritual objects all over Dongsheng. It was said that he wanted to refine a magic sword. Because of his profound cultivation, he seemed to be an expert in using the sword. At that time, senior brother Su had just obtained the cutting spring sword and wanted to learn from him. Who knew that he only won by 1 move? He said that our sect's sword skills are not even comparable to Shaoqing's and Yuanyang's. This is a great insult to me. What kind of sects are Shaoqing and Yuanyang? I have never even heard of them. Senior brother Su, you have a good temper. If I knew about this earlier, I would use this extreme light in my hand to learn from him. Let's see if he still dares to talk big. Chen Yuan frowned. How could Shen Baishuang not care about him? Hundreds of years had passed. What was the point of talking about it? The strength that Zhang Yan had revealed in the Battle of the Dragon Pillars was truly terrifying. Even if he couldn't be on good terms with such a person, he couldn't rashly offend him either. If these words were to spread out, it would clearly be summoning a powerful enemy for no reason. Long Jingchen could understand his thoughts. He said, "Junior brother, it's already in the past. Besides, that priest Zhang isn't Shen Baishuang. We can't talk about him." The young cultivator snorted and didn't say anything else. Long Jingqing said to Chen Yuan, "Sect master, with Xian Yu's defeat, Zhongtai can be said to have monopolized the northern lands. They have close to 100 celestial cities. If Xian Yu's disciples also surrender, their power will definitely increase. It's not good for me. Why don't we send someone to send gifts in the name of congratulations? We can also find out the real situation at the same time." Chen Yuan pondered for a while and nodded. "That's right. Who should we send?" Long Jingqing's gaze shifted and stopped at a girl with a slender neck and a straight waist. Her skin was smooth and her eyebrows were like willow leaves. The woman sat there with a perfectly straight figure. Her gaze was calm, and she exuded an oppressive heroic spirit. Beside her knees was a faintly discernible magic sword that was about 4 feet long. Junior sister Fan and junior sister Zhao are from the same sect. How about junior sister Go? P.S. Chapter 706. King Ying and his entourage entered the mountain by flying carriage. 2 days later, they arrived at a large hill. The carriage stopped in front of a tall decorated archway that reached the clouds. As soon as they entered the Shenwu mountain, the school of Deep Abyss had already received the news. Hence, there was already a disciple on duty waiting at the archway. At this moment, the disciple walked out slowly and bowed. He asked, "Are you King Ying of Chu?" King Ying came out of the carriage, tidied his clothes and said, "Yes, I am. May I know how I should address you?" The disciple smiled, "I am just a disciple guarding the mountain, I am not worthy of the title of Celestial Master." King Ying cupped his hands and said, "I am here under the orders of the sect leader of Zhongtai to pay a visit to Jinren Zhang. Please inform him." The disciple then understood. He took out a talisman and drew it in the air. He then flicked his finger and the talisman flew into the sky. He then said, "King Ying, please wait for a moment. I have already sent a message to the mountain. I will receive a reply soon." King Ying agreed. He turned around and saw a lake at the foot of the hill. The lake was clear and blue, the water level was like a mirror. There was a row of purple bamboos by the side of the lake, swaying with the wind. Close to the edge of the forest, there were quite a number of palaces and pavilions, with warm terraces and high pavilions, hidden in the clouds and mist, like a fairyland. Only the highest palace was grand and majestic, with a solemn atmosphere. He pointed and asked, "Taoist, is that the abode of Master Zhang's abode?" The disciple smiled, "King Ying is mistaken. That place is under the jurisdiction of the lower house. Elder Zhao lives there. The sect leader's abode is at the top of Tsangzhu Peak. You have to cross the bridge at the back of the path and walk for about 100 miles before you reach it." King Ying listened and nodded his head. It was the same for the Zhongtai sect. The main peak of Hope Voice Mountain was the place where the sect leader and a few elders cultivated. The rest of the disciples were stationed at the 2 sides of the mountain. They were not allowed to go there without permission. He pointed to the foot and asked, "Does this mountain have a name?" The disciple was stunned and then shook his head. This hill was made by the sect leader using his strength. It has not been given a name. When the king of Ying heard that the mountain below him was actually formed from soil, he couldn't help but jumped in shock. He took 2 steps back and looked at it again and again, a sense of reverence gradually grew in his heart. Although he had not entered the Tao. However, he was surrounded by profound cultivators. He knew that no one in the Zhongtai sect could do such a thing. He thought to himself, no wonder Madame Zhao repeatedly warned me not to take this opportunity to befriend Zhang Zhenren. This immortal master is indeed very powerful. Suddenly, a whistle sounded in the sky. A green figure flew over from afar. The managing disciple stretched out his hand. It turned out to be a straight, slender bamboo arrow with an intricate copper nose at the end. It was only the size of a thumb. He took out a roll of silk and opened it. He looked up and said, King Ying, the sect leader has ordered for you to enter the mountain. The King of Ying agreed and was about to return to the workshop when the managing disciple stopped him. Just as he was puzzled, he saw the disciple taking out a bell and shaking it in the air. A clear cry of a crane was heard and a giant crane with bright feathers and a red crown flew over. The disciple went forward to comfort him and said, King Ying, please ride on this crane. The King of Ying looked at it and hesitated. Although the crane was majestic, it had no saddle or rope. He was afraid that if he was not careful, he would fall down. The managing disciple could tell what he was worried about and laughed, this crane is intelligent, King Ying can ride on it without worry. The King of Ying braced himself and flipped onto the back of the crane. Before he could sit properly, the white crane spread its wings and suddenly there was a sound of wind. Without spinning, it had already soared into the sky. Looking at the people below him like ants and the mountains like bowls, he felt the world spinning. He could not help but be shocked and subconsciously hugged the crane's neck, not daring to let go. At this moment, he heard a bell-like laughter. You are such a coward. The voice was like that of a young girl. The King of Ying was shocked. After searching for a while, he realized that it was coming from the crane. He asked curiously, You can speak? The white crane laughed lightly, I was enlightened by the sect leader and got rid of the bone in my throat. Only then can I speak. The King of Ying sighed, Your supernatural powers are mysterious and unimaginable. Although he knew that all living things in heaven and earth had spirituality and demons were not surprising, he had been in the palace for a long time and had only heard of them. He could not help but take a few more glances out of curiosity. After thinking for a while, he asked, I heard that there is a giant python on the North Moc, I wonder how does fairy he compare? The white crane laughed and replied, I am not worthy of the title of fairy. The Luo family of the North Sea is one of the 8 main tribes under the ancestral court of the demon race. We are the descendants of the ancient sky demon. Before I took human form, I was just a wild crane that knew how to absorb the essence of the sun and moon. How can I be compared to a firefly? This was the first time the King of Ying heard about the 8 main demon tribes. He was puzzled and wanted to ask about it in detail. At this moment, the spiritual crane flapped its wings and flew down rapidly. For a moment, he felt a cold wind blowing against his face. He could not open his eyes and his mouth could not speak. After a while, he felt his body sinking slightly. When he opened his eyes, he realized that he had landed on a mountain peak. This place was the highest among the mountains. Not far away, there was a cave with a wide entrance. On both sides of the cliff walls, old vines climbed and twisted. In front of the entrance, the floor was paved with green stones and white jade steps. At the bottom of the steps stood a big-headed boy. At this moment, the white crane said, Honored guest, we have arrived. The King of Ying gave an "oh" and flipped down from the crane's back. He was looking around when he suddenly heard the sound of wings flapping. When he looked back, he saw that the white crane had turned into a girl with bright eyes and white teeth. The girl smiled at him and flew away on a cloud. In a glimpse, he only had time to see a beautiful back view. He could not help but stare blankly. Jingyu curled his lips and thought, Isn't it just a crane demon, what's so special about it? Although he was cursing in his heart, he was still polite on the surface. He came up and greeted, Is it your highness, the King of Ying? Please follow me. The King of Ying cupped his hands and said, Thank you for your trouble, fairy boy. He tidied up his clothes and followed him into the cave. After about 30 steps, the two of them passed through a cave, went around a stone screen, and walked a few dozen steps to the left before they arrived at a spacious cave hall. A young Taoist with eyes as deep as a serene pond and an extraordinary bearing sat on the seat of honor. A middle-aged Taoist with a kind face and big ears sat on the seat of honor beside him. Before he came, he had done his homework and knew that the person in the middle was Zhang Yan and the person beside him was the elder of Hanyuan, Chu Mu Ran. He took a few steps forward and respectfully greeted, "This little King Xiang he greets Master Zhang and Elder Chu." Zhang Yan raised his hand and smiled, "The King of Ing is too courteous. Please take a seat and talk." The King of Ing bowed and thanked him. He straightened his body and sat on a stone stool at the side. Chu Mu Ran chuckled and asked, "Your Highness, the King of Ing did not stay in Chu and instead traveled thousands of miles to come to my Hanyuan. May I know the reason for your visit?" When the King of Ing came out, Madame Zhao had specially reminded him that he should avoid the formalities in the court if possible. Therefore, he did not try to be secretive and said straightforwardly, "I am here for 3 matters." Chu Mu Ran asked, "May I know what those 3 matters are?" The King of Ing said, "The first matter is to repay Master Zhang. Master Zhang killed Rong Juanzhong at the Dragon Pillar and also killed the Golden Spirit Elder, Guardian Xian Yu and the Elder Envoy, a total of 5 people. According to the contract, Zhong Tai should be rewarded with 8 celestial cities. This time, I have brought the Shrewdness Jade Plate, Flag Seal and Golden Booklet. Master Zhang, please take a look." He took out a jade box from his sleeve and presented it to Chu Mu Ran with both hands above his head. Chu Mu Ran waved his hand and received it. He removed the lid of the box and took out the golden booklet. He opened it and saw that the 8 celestial cities were all south of the Shin House. They were not separated from each other and could be connected to the Shin House and the celestial cities. He was overjoyed and nodded at Zhang Yan. Seeing that he accepted it, the King of Ing calmed down and stood up from the chair. He nodded and said, "The second matter was ordered by Sect Master Qiao to apologize on his behalf." Zhang Yan raised his eyebrows and asked, "What does Sect Master Qiao mean?" The King of Ing did not get up from the ground. He lowered his head and said, "When I came out, Sect Master Qiao had instructed me that Song Quan did not know the gravity of the situation and acted on his own. He dared to make all sorts of excuses to stop Master Zhang from obtaining the elixir. Now, he has ordered his execution. If Master Zhang wants to see his head, I can bring it over immediately." How could Zhang Yan not see that Song Quan dared to do so because there must be someone behind him? Most likely it was one of Sect Master Qiao's favorite concubines. However, since he had already obtained the elixir and moved the entire Oxhorn Hall's treasury here, he had no intention to pursue the matter further. He waved his sleeve and smiled, "There's no need. I did not take this matter to heart. King of Ing, please get up. You can bring back the head the way you brought it." The King of Ing nodded and bowed before he got up and heaved a sigh of relief. When Madame Zhao returned to her residence, she found out that the treasury was taken by Zhang Yan. She was surprised and immediately started investigating the matter. Later on, when he found out that it was Lien Nyangzi who did it, he wanted to capture her. But who would have thought that the news was accidentally leaked, and she escaped first? After searching several times, he did not find anything, and he did not know where she went. When Sect Master Qiao returned, he had no choice but to behead Quan Song as an explanation. As for the treasury, the items inside were originally meant to be rewarded to the cultivators from outside the sect. Since it was taken away by Zhang Yan, he might as well treat it as an apology. As for the treasury, the items inside were originally meant to be rewarded to the cultivators from outside the sect. Since it was taken away by Zhang Yan, he might as well treat it as an apology. The real treasures of the past generations were hidden in the belly of the mountain. Even with the sect master's token, it was not something that could be taken away easily. At this point, he revealed a look of gratitude. "If it weren't for immortal Zhang, I'm afraid I would still be shackled and unable to see the sun. I can only give you a treasure map left by my ancestor." He opened his mouth and took out a wax pill. After crushing it, he pulled out a foot-thin piece of silk cloth and handed it over. "Jinren, please take a look." Zhang Yan took it and looked at it. His eyes shone with curiosity. He put it down and asked, how did the King of Ing obtain this treasure map? The King of Ing cupped his hands towards the sky and said, the royal family of Great Chu is the descendant of Grandmaster Zhongtai Jinzhong. This map was passed down by the Grandmaster. When it was passed down to my father, because he doted on the youngest son of the King of Ing, he bestowed this map to him. Chu Mu Ran interrupted, other than the King of Ing, does anyone else know about this? The King of Ing thought for a while and said, it seems that Imperial Tutor Hui Xian knows a little and tried to ask me a few times. I was afraid that he would covet it, so I made a fake map. After this map was stolen, he never mentioned it again. Chapter 707. Chu Muran glanced at the map and thought to himself, passed down by Grandmaster Jinzhong. But I don't know what it is. Even Hui Xian coveted it, so it must be something extraordinary. Zhang Yan noticed Chu Muran's expression and did not intend to hide it from him. He said, rumor has it that before Grandmaster Damu ascended, he hid a true weapon in the North Sea. This map points to the place where the treasure is kept. Chu Muran exclaimed, true weapon. But then he looked at King Ying suspiciously. His meaning was clear, since it's a true weapon, why didn't Zhongtai take it himself? King Ying was afraid that he would misunderstand and quickly explained the situation. Chu Muran was relieved and said eagerly, Head Shixiang is not a cultivator of this continent. Why not give it a try? Zhang Yan smiled, it's not that easy. He waved his sleeve and swept the map off the table. It floated in front of Chu Muran and said, Junior apprentice brother, take a look. Chu Muran was startled. After a moment of hesitation, he took the map and carefully spread it in front of him. He looked at it for a while and raised his head in surprise, the hidden place is in the old Xianluo sect? Zhang Yan smiled, yes. Chu Muran was disappointed and said, now that the North Sea is occupied by the Python tribe, this treasure is not something that can be obtained now. What's the use of this map? It will only burn my hands. King Ying heard his unfriendly tone and panicked. After the Dragon Pillar tournament, although Xianyu was destroyed, many of the original guardians and envoys were still around. If he wanted to mix the disciples of the two sects, he would have to rely on Zhang Yan for many things. If this matter was self-defeating, he knew what would happen to him. He wanted to defend himself but did not know what to say. He was so anxious that his forehead was sweating. Zhang Yan saw that he was restless and comforted him with a smile. Xiang Zhanfu has already told us the details. He will not blame King Ying. King Ying said, I don't dare, I don't dare. Zhang Yan saw that he was still panicking. He thought for a while and said, someone, find a secluded courtyard for King Ying. Settle down. Jingyu walked up and said, Your Royal Highness Ying Wang. Please follow me. Yes, yes. The King of Ing stood up anxiously, bowed and left. After he left, Chu Muran said with a regretful expression, I thought that I, Han Yuan, would be able to obtain a supreme treasure. Unexpectedly, it was the flower in the mirror. The moon in the water. Zhang Yan smiled faintly and said, not necessarily. If you really want to give it a try, it's not impossible. It's just that the time isn't right yet. Besides, with this map in my hands, there's no need to worry about the treasure escaping. There's no need to rush to get it. Chu Muran nodded repeatedly and said, Senior Marshal Brother is wise. Real treasures have their own spirits. If it is really fated with me, I will definitely be able to obtain it. After all, the Python tribe is a powerful force. It is best not to provoke them if possible. Zhang Yan smiled faintly and did not deny it. He only asked, have you completed the task that I asked you to do? Chu Muran quickly said, I have followed Senior Marshal Brother's instructions. In the past few days, I have built hundreds of altars along the cliff shore from west to east. I have also set up a formation to lock the gate. I have also moved 12 sects to this place so that they can guard the gate. Zhang Yan said approvingly, you have done a good job, I will reward you. Chu Muran quickly said, I dare not take credit for such a small matter. Zhang Yan said, Junior Marshal Brother Chu, there is no need to belittle yourself. I have been away from the sect for several months. You and your 2 junior martial brothers have managed the sect well without any oversight. I have seen it with my own eyes. You can choose a few treasures from the mountain's storehouse. Compared to when Zhang Yan first arrived, the Cold Abyss sect had expanded more than 10 times. Chu Muran had also recruited many disciples, but the number of treasures he could bestow to them was too little. When he saw Zhang Yan move a storehouse, he wanted to ask for a few treasures, but he found it difficult to ask. Now that he heard it, he could not help but be overjoyed and said, "Thank you, senior martial brother." "Thank you, senior martial brother." Zhang Yan smiled and said, "I will be going into closed-door cultivation for the next few days. The affairs of the sect will still be managed by the 3 of you." Chu Muran was startled. He thought about it and said, "Senior martial brother, Cold Abyss sect now has 8 more immortal cities. I don't know how to deal with them. Senior martial brother, please tell me." He was half happy and half worried about the sudden appearance of 8 immortal cities. According to the situation in Dongshan continent, each immortal city should have at least 1 Yuaniing perfected person in charge to ensure that nothing would go wrong. However, Zhang Yan was the only one in the Cold Abyss sect who had such a cultivation. Even with the addition of Zhang Boyan, the lame Taoist, and Song Chuyuan, they only took up half of the remaining 4 cities. If someone was plotting against them, they would not be able to look after them. Zhang Yan waved his sleeves and said, "After the battle at the Gathering of Dragon Pillars, many of the northern Yuaniing cultivators were injured or killed. Cold Abyss sect does not have any strong enemies outside, so there is no need to worry about this." Although he said that, Chu Muran was still a little worried. As they were talking, a boy came in with a letter in his hand. He said, "Sect Master, there is a letter from a Taoist. He said that he wants to give it to Sect Master personally." Zhang Yan raised his eyebrows and released his spiritual opportunity to check. Seeing that the letter was not tampered with, he used his mana to grab it. He opened it and saw that there was no signature on the letter. He asked, "What does the Taoist look like?" The boy said, "That person left in a hurry, so the disciples guarding the gate did not see him clearly. After he sent the letter, he went to the extreme heaven. He seemed to be a perfected person." Zhang Yan's eyes moved slightly. He opened the letter and shook it open. After a few glances, he couldn't help but smile and pass it to Chu Muran. He said, "Junior martial brother, take it and read it yourself." Chu Muran took it in surprise, but when he read it, his eyes widened. The person who wrote the letter was the former chief envoy of Xianyue Mountain, Chunyu Ji. In the letter, he said that as long as Zhang Yan no longer interfered with the matters between the 2 sects, he was willing to pay tribute every year. After reading it, he stood up and bowed. He sighed deeply and said, "Today, I know senior martial brother's prowess. Junior martial brother's previous worries were for nothing." Dongxing South, Yutsue Mountain. Under a green pine tree, Hui Xian Grand Master was playing chess with a green-faced, long-bearded Taoist. In less than a moment, the Taoist gave a strange cry and gave up. He then cursed a few times and tidied up the chessboard, wanting to play again. Hui Xian Grand Master put the rui in his hand and stopped him. He said, "Fellow Taoist, you have lost 7 games in a row. You have lost 3 talismans and 4 bottles of pills. Let's call it a day." The green-faced Taoist was not willing. He glared at him and said, "No, I have to win a game against you today no matter what." Hui Xian Grand Master shook his head. In the past, the green-faced Taoist had never won a game of chess. Today, for some reason, the green-faced Taoist insisted on winning a game. It was as if he felt his talismans and pills were too hot to handle. He sighed and said, "You know you can't do it but you still do it. Why do you have to be like this?" The green-faced Taoist looked at him and said, "Yes, I know I can't do it but I still do it. Why do I have to be like this?" Hui Xian Grand Master made a sound of agreement and raised his head to look at him. After a long time, he sighed and said, "Fellow Taoist, you have put in a lot of effort. The green-faced Taoist snorted and said coldly, "If it wasn't for the fact that you saved my disciple's life, whether you live or die, what does it have to do with me?" He stretched out his hand to push the Rui away and swept the chess pieces on the ground. He got up and walked towards a cave abode on the cliff. Hui Xian Grand Master was expressionless. He knocked the Rui on the chessboard and all the chess pieces returned to their positions. He muttered to himself, "But one more game." At this moment, there was a flash of light in the sky. Chu Changji landed in front of him and said, "Master, disciple is back." Hui Xian Grand Master made a sound of agreement and asked, "How is it?" Chu Changji said angrily, "Bai Daoren is not like the others. He treats disciple with good tea and good wine, but every time we talk about serious matters, he always evades the topic." When disciple came back, he said it's not that he doesn't want to help, it's just that with people like cult master Hanyuan around, it's hard for him to persuade the senior and junior brothers in the sect. Hui Xian Grand Master was not surprised and said indifferently, "He said the truth." He originally wanted to instigate the 3 southern sects to pressure Zhongtai and then think of a way to lure the Python tribe in. But during the battle at the Dragon Pillar, the supernatural powers and mana that Zhang Yan revealed greatly shocked the cultivators of the 3 southern sections. Before they understand his attitude, no one dared to relax. Hui Xian Grand Master's eyes revealed a frightening radiance and said, "Looks like if we want to succeed, we must get rid of that Taoist Zhang." Chu Changji said, "Master is waiting for the Python tribe to ask for help." Hui Xian Grand Master shook his head and said, "It's too late. They can wait but I can't." He had cultivated for 900 years and his lifespan was almost up. If he did not find the opportunity to break through, he would definitely have to reincarnate. But he did not come from a big sect and did not have the method of inheritance. He could only place his hopes on the true weapon left by founding Master Daimu. He got Luo Jiangyu's promise that as long as he could help the Python tribe settle in Dongsheng, not only would he help him get the true weapon, he could also ask the tribe's elder ancestor Luo Mengzi to come forward and subdue him. After all, this was a chance. If he succeeded, he would reach the sky in one step. He was a person who cherished his body and was not willing to risk his life to fight with others. But the situation forced him to make a decision. Chu Changji could also feel Hui Xian Grand Master's determination, but he was a little perturbed. Zhang Yan killed over 20 Yuanying cultivators in a row and defeated Rong Juanzhong in a head-on fight. Just thinking about it made one shudder. Other than the people from the heavenly abode coming forward, he really could not think of anyone who could stop him. Hui Xian Grand Master said, "As long as that Taoist Zhang has not achieved the heavenly abode, then there will be weaknesses. I have already found a plan to get rid of him." Chu Changji said, "How does Benefactor want to do it?" Hui Xian Grand Master said, "I want to set up a trap and lure this person here. Then I will invite 2 Taoist friends who have similar skills to me to get rid of this person together." This idea sounded ordinary, but as long as the plan was too ingenious, not only was it not easy to execute, there could not be any mistakes. Therefore the success of the plan depended on whether one could grasp the crux of the matter. Chu Changji thought for a while and said, "Benefactor, there are 2 difficulties here. One is how to lure that Taoist Zhang to take the bait, and the other is where to find the people who will cooperate with us." Hui Xian Grand Master said in a deep voice, "A few days ago, Zhongtai sect sent a letter saying that Xiao Huanzhuan and that Zhao Ru are searching for 3 spiritual herbs to please that Taoist Zhang. I think that these 3 spiritual herbs must be extremely important to him and we can do something about it. As for the people who will cooperate with us, I have already thought of 2 people, but it will not be easy to invite them. I will need to pay them a visit personally." Chapter 708. After a day, Hui Xian Old Ancestor bade farewell to the green-faced Taoist and set off with Chu Changji towards the south. Half a month later, the terrain below them gradually changed from the undulating mountain range to a vast plain. After traveling for a few more days, a towering and strange cliff appeared in front of them. Behind the cliff, there was water pouring down, crashing into the deep ravine below. The water vapor rolled and gurgled out. On the other side, it looked like it was chiseled by an axe or chopped by a knife. It was flat and straight. dozens of giant eagles with wingspans of 70 to 80 feet built their nests on the cliff. Below, the trees were lush and weeds were overgrown. Snakes and pythons with a circumference of 10 feet could be seen slithering on the ground. Looking over, there was a line of white in the distant sky, the bluish-green like it was washed. There was the sound of waves crashing into the shore. Hui Xian old ancestor stopped the escaping light and after taking a few glances, he pointed and said, "It is here. Further south is south vast ocean boundary." Chu Changji focused and suddenly his expression changed. "Teacher, there is such a heavy demonic aura here." Hui Xian old ancestor said in a deep voice, "This place is called White Flood Dragon Stream. There is a flood dragon in the deep pool at the bottom. When I first became Yuanying, to refine a magic treasure, I came with a few Taoist friends to slay the flood dragon. However, this evildoer is too cunning and tough. The talismans and swords in our hands are unable to harm it. There were a few times when we could not take care of it. Now that hundreds of years have passed, this old flood dragon's skills must have become more profound. However, as long as we do not provoke it, it will not find trouble with us." Chu Changji said in surprise, "The person that teacher mentioned, could it be that he is staying here because of this flood dragon?" Hui Xian old ancestor shook his head, "Not so. After Fu Yang's sect was defeated, this person was afraid of being chased by our 5 sects and hid here. He wanted to borrow the power of this flood dragon to avoid calamity, and that white flood dragon also wanted to borrow him to defend against external enemies. The man and the serpent helped each other, and thus they avoided several calamities. However, I have not seen him for over 100 years and don't know if he is still here. Luckily he has 2 disciples who are natives of this place. Even if he left, we can still find his whereabouts." The 2 of them went around the waterfall and turned towards the east of the cliff. There was a hill that looked like it was shaved off. And in the middle, it looked like it was cut into 3 sections by a giant sword, revealing a deep ravine. There were 3 sections of vine bridges connecting them. On one side of the cliff, there was an exquisitely renovated grass hut. Seeing this scene, old ancestor Hui Xian's expression relaxed slightly. "This person is still here." Chu Changji looked around and saw many green-skinned gourds hanging from the ropes. He didn't know what kind of rare fruit it was. The color was glossy. The water was smooth and round, emitting waves of brilliance. From time to time, the pleasing sound of rocks being struck could be heard. He couldn't help but look over curiously. However, upon closer inspection, he was horrified. The gourd actually had faces growing on it. Some were happy, some were sad, some were worried, some were annoyed, some were angry, some were confused, and so on and so forth. Hui Xian old ancestor frowned and knocked on his back with his rui, reminding him, "Disciple, don't look at it too much. That is the 9 hearts 6 desires gourd. If you look at it for too long, your soul will be taken away by it. Even if you are saved, your mind will not be clear and you will become a walking corpse." Chu Changji couldn't help but shiver when he heard the reminder. In just this short while, his heart was already shaken. He hurriedly circulated his inner qi and collected his mind, not looking at the gourd again. Hui Xian old ancestor sighed silently. His master was a wandering cultivator and the techniques that he passed down had no use against evil and ghostly things. If he was taught the proper techniques of Xianmen, his mind would always be stable, and why would he be afraid of this item? At most, he would be able to recover after a moment of absent-mindedness. From the start of his cultivation, he was determined to achieve the great Tao. However, this path was really too difficult. From a young alchemist boy to the 3rd great cultivator of Yuanying, he had gone through many hardships to get his current cultivation. 1,000 years of hard work, if it were to turn to dust like this, he would not be willing. Even if there was a sliver of opportunity, he had to try and fight for it. At this moment, he saw that Chu Changji was fine and said, "There are many filthy formations in this valley. Your cultivation is not enough, so you don't have to go. I will go and see this person alone." Chu Changji hurriedly agreed. Hui Xian old ancestor lowered the traveling light and slowly descended. The restriction placed here was very simple and crude. He used the Rui scepter to lightly sweep over it and opened up a path ahead. When he reached the bottom, he saw a giant man with an ugly face. His clothes were open, and he used a fan to cover his face. His limbs were swollen, and he was sleeping soundly on a flat boulder. Hui Xian, old ancestor, used the Rui to knock twice on his head to wake him up and said, "Sure Nu, is your master around?" The giant man shook his head and opened his eyes in a daze. He stared at the person in front of him, and after a while, he realized that he recognized him and said, "Yes, yes. Yesterday master spoiled a furnace of pills and is very angry. Daoren, you better not provoke him." Hui Xian, old ancestor, made a sound of acknowledgement and ignored him. He walked straight to the front of the grass hut, but he didn't dare to stand too close. He stood 100 feet away and asked loudly, "Is Daoist Ji around?" After a short while, a gust of ghostly white wind swept out and condensed into a gray-robed scholar. This person was around 40 years old and his face was gloomy and cold. His temples were slightly white. He used an extremely unfriendly gaze to size up Hui Xian, old ancestor, and said, "What are you doing here?" Hui Xian, old ancestor, cupped his hands and said, "How is Daoist Ji recently?" Ji Daoren snorted and said, "What's good about it? Just waiting for death." He took another look at him and moved aside. "Come in and sit." Hui Xian, old ancestor, bowed again and entered the grass hut. His gaze turned and he sat down on a clean rattan chair. Two stiff-faced white-clothed females came out from the inner room and brought over a cup of steaming hot tea. Ji Daoren said impatiently, "Speak, what's the matter? I'm in a hurry to concoct medicine and have no time to chat with you." Hui Xian, old ancestor, pondered for a moment and said, "I would like to ask Daoist Ji to help me deal with someone." Ji Daoren said, "Who?" Hui Xian, old ancestor, did not hide anything and told him everything that Zhang Yan had done since he came to Dongshin continent. At last, he cupped his hands and said with a solemn expression, "This person is an obstacle to my path of Tao and needs to be eliminated. Please help me, Daoist Ji." Reverend Yun's face turned solemn and said, "Who is this person?" Hui Xian, old ancestor, said, "This person is not a Taoist cultivator of Dongshin continent but a visitor from another continent. Reverend Ji, you don't have to worry about someone coming to seek revenge. This person has precious treasures on him. Just looking at the profound weapons that others have seen, there are 3 to 4 of them. If Daoist Ji can..." Before he could finish, Ji Daoren waved his hand and interrupted him, "You can use these words to bully those juniors. There's no need to brag in front of me. Tell me the truth. If I help you this time, what benefits can you give me?" Hui Xian, old ancestor, was silent for a moment and said, "At our level, it's nothing more than finding a method to form a cave. Even though I found a fated chance, I can't tell Daoist Ji about it. However, I can point out a clear path for you. It depends on whether Daoist Ji is willing or not." Ji Daoren said, "Tell me about it." Hui Xian, old ancestor, said in a deep voice, "Under the dragon pillar of Dongshin continent, there is a Taoist book written by Patriarch Damu. There is a scroll of Taoist manual written by Grand Master Daimu. Now Zhong Tai has obtained it and is trying to break the prohibition spell. I can help you to get it first." Ji Ren sneered. "Taoist Book of Damu. Such a cheap thing. Why don't you get it yourself? You are here to sue me." Hui Xian, old ancestor, said seriously, "I am Chu's imperial preceptor, a person with roots, and I have received Reverend He's grace. It is not my wish to fall out with Zhong Tai." Ji Daoren stared at him and chuckled, "No, it's not that you can't get it, it's that you can't confirm that there is a Taoist book under the dragon pillar. Am I right?" Not waiting for Hui Xian to reply, he smiled strangely, "Even so, I can promise you this." Hui Xian, old ancestor, was full of suspicions when he heard this. Could it be that there was really something under the dragon pillar that he didn't know about? Ji Daoren asked again, "You said that the 2 of you don't have the confidence to win. Then where can we find the other person?" Although the Dongshin continent was large, there were only a few cultivators of the 3rd tier of the nascent soul realm, and they were all famous. The few that he knew were all in the 3 southern sects, so it was impossible for them to rope them in. Hui Xian old ancestor raised his rui and pointed on the table. 3 words floated out. Ji Daoren took a look and narrowed his eyes, Shaozang Jing. Shenwu Mountain, Zhangzhou Peak. 10 days after Zhang Yan returned to the sect, Song Chuyuan and the lame Taoist also returned to Han Yuan sect. Only Zhang Boyan's whereabouts were unknown. The 2 of them entered the sect and went up to the peak to greet Zhang Yan. After greeting, Zhang Yan invited the 2 of them to sit down and said, "In a few days, I will go into closed-door cultivation. I will have to trouble the 2 of you to guard the sect." Song Chuyuan hurriedly said, "We don't dare to let down Reverend's trust." The lame Taoist also said, "Shenwu Mountain stretches across the north of Tian Bay. It sits on the majestic mountains and dangerous rivers. Now that there is a restriction, if we don't guard it well, we won't have the face to see Reverend again." Zhang Yan nodded. With the 2 of them guarding the sect and with the help of the restriction formation, even if enemies came, they would be able to handle it. He used 3 days to settle all the trifling matters in the sect. Then, he found Fu Baoxing and carefully taught him the method of opening meridians and breaking through closed-door training. After that, he sealed the abode and went into closed-door training. First, he checked the spirit herbs at hand. Every single one of them was checked carefully. After checking that there were no mistakes, he rolled up his sleeves and threw all of them into the furnace in front of him. Then, he used his magic power to ignite the furnace fire. This process took a long time. About 30 days later, the furnace was boiling rapidly. The air was turbulent and clouds were surging. Zhang Yan's expression was solemn. This was an extremely crucial step before forming the pill. If he made a mistake, even though all his previous efforts would not be wasted, the effect of the pill would be greatly reduced. He calmed his heart and qi and stabilized the furnace fire. Another 6 days passed. There was a loud cracking sound in the cave abode. The furnace lid instantly broke into pieces. A gust of pure spirit qi rushed out from the furnace and dozens of pills shot out. Zhang Yan's eyes lit up. With a shout, he waved his sleeves and all of them were sucked over. He opened his palm and dozens of flawless white fruits that looked like ice jade were floating in the air. When he looked closely, there were a total of 66 of them. Not including what he got earlier, the white moon jade fruits in front of him could support him for 66 years. To cultivate the Yuanjin Dharmakaya, he still needed a lot of them. However, since Zhong Tai was willing to search for these 3 spirit herbs for him, he could save a lot of effort. He did not hesitate. With a flick of his finger, he kept a white moon jade fruit into the strong cloud. Then, he attracted Jun Yang's qi essence. The 2 qi intertwined and slowly entered his body. After refining one, he didn't stop. He continued to refine the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and so on. After refining 25 of them, a golden glow emerged from his body, radiating brilliance in all directions. His eyes, ears, mouth, and nose were all shimmering with golden light. The top of his head was misty, and the 3 clouds gradually gathered together, faintly showing signs of merging into one. P.S. Chapter 709. Mount Shao, Great Hall of the Golden Bell. Du Shishuan stood at the bottom of the stairs, his back ramrod straight as he said loudly, "Father, in the Battle of Tribute Valley City 2 days ago, this child and a few elders killed a total of 5 Xianyu protectors. Only Chunyu Ji and 2 others escaped. Most of the elders in the sect were present at this moment." Elder Lin coughed and said, "Young sect master, Xianyu has long since perished. There's no longer a protector." Du Shishuan snorted, as if he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to him. Elder Bai bowed to sect master Qiao and said, "Senior brother, after this little brother investigated, these 3 people fled towards the eastern boundless sea realm. Right now, they're hiding in a remote immortal city called Zhu Luo. Do you need this little brother to send people to pursue and annihilate them?" While Zhang Yan was in seclusion, the Zhongtai sect sent disciples to gather immortal cities and pacify the people. Before he died, Rong Juanzhong had made a plan to expel the 8 envoys and protectors from the sect. At the same time, he had asked the 3 southern sects to lend a helping hand and try to gain a foothold before plotting a plan to restore the sect. Chunyuji had sent disciples to the south several times, but these 3 sects had misgivings because Zhang Yan was helping Zhongtai from behind. Thus, none of them had tried to take chestnuts out of the fire. After more than 20 years, they were gradually forced into a corner by Zhongtai. In a battle the day before, 5 Yuanying cultivators had died. The remaining people could only take their disciples and flee. Sect Master Qiao weighed the pros and cons and finally shook his head. The winds and waves of the eastern boundless sea are high, and dragons often appear in the sea. If these 3 people hide in the immortal city and don't come out with restrictions, it will be difficult to break through unless we mobilize the strength of the sect. Since we've already chased them out of the Dongxing continent, the northern lands are in my hands. There's no need to worry about them for now. At this moment, apart from the original Xianyu mountain gate that Jinren he hadn't taken down, the rest of the land had been occupied by Zhongtai. And the people of Zhongtai Zhou had long concluded that once Xianyu was destroyed, there was no need for this Jinren he to continue holding on. He would definitely reincarnate in a few decades. As long as they waited patiently, this important land would be Zhongtai's sooner or later. Du Shixuan raised his eyebrows and cupped his fists. Father, you need to remove the roots when you are cutting the grass. Elder Lin cast a sidelong glance at Du Shixuan and said, young sect master is nothing more than a few stray dogs. Hiding in He Gang and struggling at death's door, what kind of storm can they stir up? Sect leader Qiao nodded and said, although the 2 sects have merged, our sect is not without worries. If all the elders go out, who will take care of these immortal cities? Elder Yan also said, Senior brother, the most important thing now is to organize the Xianyu Dao manual. If we can evolve the divine arts of Patriarch Dami, Zhongtai, might be able to monopolize Dongxing one day. Everyone in the hall nodded in agreement. It was just that the 2 sects had been separated for thousands of years, and many of Xianyu's cultivation methods and Dao techniques had already changed. If they wanted to straighten out the clues and give it to their disciples to cultivate, this was not something that could be done in 10 or 20 years, but at least 100 or 200 years. Du Shixuan saw that they all spoke one after another, all of them opposing him to kill. Anger appeared on his face, and he suddenly turned around and strode out of the hall. Sect leader Qiao did not stop him, but instructed the disciple beside him, later, go call Sun, to the back hall. That disciple immediately left the side hall. Before Du Shixuan left the golden platform, he was called to guess that he had something to say to him in private, so he went to the back hall and waited for half an hour before he was called in. After entering the hall, he saw sect leader Qiao and Madame Zhao sitting in the hall, so he came up to greet them. Sect leader Qiao saw that he looked angry, as if he was still brooding over what had happened just now. He looked at Madame Zhao, and the latter understood. She opened her red lips and said, this child does not need to blame your father. He had his reasons for doing this. Du Shixuan took a step forward, cupped his fists and said, Father, Chunyuji and the others are Zhongtai's greatest trouble. If we do not get rid of them today, there will be trouble in the future. What could be more important than this? Sect leader Qiao sighed and said, how could I not know what this child is saying? It's just that there has been a difficult matter in the sect recently, and we cannot leave our hands for even a moment. After this matter is settled, we will think of a suitable time to go out to sea. Du Shixuan thought for a moment, and asked, Father, are you talking about that dragon pillar? Sect leader Qiao nodded and said, yes. At this point, his face slightly darkened. The 3 sects are pressing hard, and it is easy to stay still, but not easy to move. After more than 20 years, the restrictive formation in the dragon pillar had gradually disappeared, revealing a stone mansion inside. There were still a few scattered restrictive formations on it, and even if they did not try to remove them, within a few months, they would disappear on their own. Everyone speculated that even if the mansion did not contain founding Master Demi's legacy, it must be an ancient immortal's cave. This matter was supposed to be a secret, but who would have thought that the 3 southern sects found out about it, and sent an envoy to say that if there is a heavenly treasure, it does not belong to Zhong Tai alone. Sect leader Qiao knew that Zhong Tai was strong on the outside, but weak on the inside. He looked strong on the outside, but in reality he was weak. With the 3 sects joining forces, he would not be able to resist them, and if he gave them an excuse, it would not be a good thing, so he could only drag it on and not lift the seal. Du Shixuan said, "Why not invite uncle-in-law and Zhang Jinren over, this child and the 2 of them together? Even if the 3 sects came, we would not be afraid." Sect leader Qiao sighed and said, "Zhang Jinren has been in seclusion for more than 20 years, and did not show his face. I sent a few gifts back, but did not manage to find out when he will come out. As for your uncle-in-law, father does not trust him." Previously, because of the Python tribe incident, he suspected that Elder Hui Xian had other plans, so he ignored him for the past 20 years, and Hui Xian also did not return to the mountain, so the rumors of their discord spread like wildfire, and everyone knew about it. Lady Zhao advised, "Husband, Hui Xian was thinking of Zhong Tai at that time, and did not have any bad intentions. Besides, he is already at the end of his life, what other plans can he have? Why not invite him back, give him more benefits, and get rid of the previous grudges, so that we can use him?" Sect leader Qiao was silent. At this moment, a disciple hurriedly came to report, "Sect leader, yesterday 2 people barged into the Dragon Pillar Forbidden Grounds, and tried to open the formation to enter the stone residence." Sect leader Qiao was shocked, and stood up. What happened to the stone residence? The day before yesterday, it was Du Shixuan who led the group to attack Chunyuji, and to ensure victory, almost all the Yuanian cultivators in the sect were sent out, so there was only one elder guarding the Dragon Pillar, and it could be said to be very empty. That disciple said, "The stone residence is safe." After a bitter fight with Elder Wei, he chased the intruders away, and did not let them succeed. Sect leader Qiao said in a deep voice, "Did you find out who the intruders were?" That disciple said, "Elder Wei said that one of the figures was suspected to be Xing Fu Lu Xingjinren, who appeared on the Dragon Pillar. It's this person." When sect leader Qiao heard that it was not someone from the 3 southern sects, his heart slightly relaxed, and then he said with slight anger, "This kind of scoundrel dares to bully my Zhong Tai." Lady Zhao said, "Husband, sending people to guard the Dragon Pillar is not a long-term solution. Why not set up a formation to prevent outsiders from spying?" Sect leader Qiao waved his hand, and said, "How can I not know this? But it's better if the formation is not set up. If it is set up, it will give others the opportunity to gossip, and if the 3 southern sects use this to cause trouble, it will be hard to defend against them." Lady Zhao lowered her head in thought, and after a while, her beautiful eyes lit up, as if she had gained some insight, and said, "I have an idea, maybe it can help husband solve this problem." Sect leader Qiao made an "oh" sound, and said with a smile, "It's rare for lady to have an idea, I want to hear it." Lady Zhao said angrily, "Husband, please don't tease me. Your concubine's plan was based on what happened just now." Sect leader Qiao said, "Lady, please speak." Lady Zhao stretched out her slender finger, and said, "Husband, after the 2 sects became one, because priest Zhang is in closed-door cultivation, we have not held a congratulatory banquet. Now that Chunyuji and the others have been chased away, why not use this as an excuse to hold a banquet, and invite the cultivators of the 3 sects as guests, and at the banquet, we can discuss how to deal with that immortal abode." Sect leader Qiao said unhappily, "What kind of idea is this? Under the Dragon Pillar there may be a Taoist book written by Master Demi, it must not be given to outsiders." Zhao Furan tugged at his sleeve and said snappily, "Husband, why are you in such a hurry? I have not finished what I wanted to say. I have my reasons for doing so. Since the matter of husband and Hui Xian not being on good terms is known even outside the sect, we might as well go with the flow. During the banquet, we can ask Hui Xian to secretly steal the book." Sect leader Qiao's body shook, as if he had understood something, and quickly sat up straight, and said, "Continue." Lady Zhao's jade face showed some satisfaction, and said, "At that time, all the cultivators of my Zhongtai will be at the banquet. If the Taoist book is stolen, the cultivators of the 3 sects will not blame us. After that, I will ask Hui Xian to hide the Taoist book, and I will escape. When I leave, I will make a big fuss, and it will be best if the cultivators of the 3 sects chase after me, and then I will be cleared of suspicion. Sect leader Qiao thought for a while, and felt that this idea was feasible, and said, "Will Hui Xian do what I want?" Lady Zhao said, "He does not have much time left, the day of his reincarnation is near, and he is only a disciple, how can he be compared to me, Zhongtai? Is he not afraid that we will find the place of his reincarnation, and stop him from entering Dao in his next life? He will have to agree to this, even if he doesn't want to." Sect leader Qiao stood up and walked a few steps with his hands behind his back, as if he was thinking. After a while, he suddenly stopped, and turned around, and said, "Lady, later you will personally go to Deep Abyss sect, there is no need to ask Zhang Jinren to come down the mountain." Lady Zhao was startled, and said, "Husband is asking Zhang Jinren to guard against Hui Xian?" Sect leader Qiao said in a deep voice, "This matter is of great importance, we must guard against it. Moreover, with Zhang Jinren coming, it will be good to intimidate the cultivators of the 3 sects, and not let them have any strange ideas." Lady Zhao nodded, and said, "Good, it just so happens that I have found quite a lot of spiritual medicine that Zhang Jinren needs, I will leave tomorrow morning, and set off for Deep Abyss." Du Shixuan said, "Your son is willing to go with mother." Sect leader Qiao laughed, and said, "If you and your son go together, I think your sincerity is enough." He then turned his head, and said to Lady Zhao, "That dragon pillar must not have any more flaws in the next few days, your husband needs to go and check it again, I will have to trouble Lady Zhao to take care of this matter." Lady Zhao bowed, and sent sect leader Qiao out. She chatted with Du Shixuan for a while, and then used the excuse that the time had come, and she needed to circulate her internal energy, and returned to the inner hall. When she reached the bed, she said to the maid, "Go and call Chu Changji here." Not long after, Chu Changji came to the front of the bed, and he came up, and bowed deeply, saying, "Greetings to Lady Zhao." Lady Zhao said, "Go back and tell your master that I will help him this time, on account of my late sister, I hope that he will not make any stupid moves again." To be continued. Chapter 710. Chu Changji bade farewell to Madame Zhao and left the Golden Bell Hall. He quietly left Hope Sound Mountain and soared into the light, flying southwest. Half a day later, he arrived at a desolate ridge in the western suburbs. Most of the people living here were savages who wore beast skins and ate raw meat and drank blood. Due to the thinness of the spiritual veins, not many cultivators paid attention to it, and it was Hui Xian's temporary residence now. Chu Changji descended on a cloud in front of a cave. He used his spell to open the prohibition spell and walked inside. There were no bright pearls or lamps in the cave, so the light was dim. After a dozen steps, he saw an old Taoist sitting cross-legged on a rock. The old Taoist bowed and said, "Master, your disciple has returned." Hui Xian opened his eyes and said in a deep voice, "Disciple, have you seen Zhao Ru?" When he asked this, even though his expression was still calm, his tone still unconsciously revealed a bit of urgency. Chu Changji replied, "Master, it is as you expected. Madame Zhao has managed to convince sect leader Qiao." Hui Xian heard this and could not hold it in anymore. He stood up and laughed. His eyes looked at the top of the cave and said, "My plan has succeeded." After he decided on the plan to get rid of Zhang Yan, he spent a few months to gather all the manpower. But before he could do anything, he received news that Zhang Yan had sealed his residence and went into seclusion. He had no choice but to wait patiently. Just like that, 25 years had passed. He saw that his lifespan was getting shorter and he did not know when Zhang Yan would come out of seclusion. He was anxious. At this time, when Ji Daoren heard that the Dragon Pillar prohibition spell was dispelled, he urged him to go down and take the items inside. Because he needed this person's help, it was not good to offend him. He could only order Chu Changji to meet Madame Zhao at Zhongtai Gate. Madame Zhao's plan that day was actually his. It was a plan for Zhongtai Gate, but it was actually to make it easier for him to obtain the Taoist book. He did not have much hope for this plan. Now that he heard that it succeeded, even though he was usually calm, he could not help but lose his composure at this moment. Chu Changji said, "Master, there is a problem that you have to guard against. Hui Xian calmed himself down and asked, what's the difficulty? Chu Changji said, that Xiao Huanzhuan ordered Zhao Ru to go to the divine house to invite that priest Zhang down. It seems like she is trying to prevent Master from playing any tricks. Her actions are really despicable. Hui Xian turned around with his back facing Chu Changji. With a sinister smile, he said, no, this is a good thing. Perhaps the two difficult matters can be settled at the same time. On the second day after Madame Zhao presented her plan, she prepared a carriage and summoned Du Shixuan. Together with 100 or so maids, they rode the wind and traveled to the Shenwu mountain. In addition to the mother and son, Fan Yinghui, the owner of the 100 Shadow Sword, one of the 6 famous swords of Fengxiang Sword School, was also with them. As the envoy of the Fengxiang Sword School, she had been ordered to stay in the Zhongtai sect for the past few years. When she heard that Zhao Ru wanted to go to Han Yuan, she also wanted to see what Rong Juanzhong looked like. Therefore, she decided to accompany Zhao Ru. When the mistress of the Zhongtai sect set out, she had her own arrangements and the journey was smooth. After 10 days or so, they arrived at the foot of Cangzhu Peak. Chu Muran led a few people to wait at the entrance. After greeting each other, they were invited to settle down in the pavilion inside the mountain. The 3 of them stayed halfway up Cangzhu Peak. From here, the mountain was covered in greenery and the lake was rippling. White cranes and spiritual birds came and went from time to time. Beyond the peak, there was a stretch of mountains like the sea. Further away, there was the magnificent Beima Fury waves. Fan Yinghui looked at the majestic picture and praised, People's Shenwu mountain stretches across the north of the world. It is the wilderness of the Huang Kingdom. But from what I see now, although it is not as beautiful as Zhongtai's Golden Mountain moist water, white cauldron overlooking the peak, it is not far off. Madame Zhao, however, felt that it was normal and said, excluding our 5 sects, in our Dongshin continent, those who can occupy 3 cities can be considered a big sect. After the Battle of the Dragon Pillars, the Deep Stream sect occupied 9 celestial cities. It is not strange for them to have such a scene. Fan Yinghui looked over and said, what is rare is that everyone in Hanyuan sect is working hard. There is also someone like Zhang Jinren. In less than 100 years, it will become a big sect again. Sister, please remind sect leader Qiao to be careful. Her words hinted that Hanyuan sect would one day turn the tables. How could Madame Zhao not hear it? She did not mind and said, Zhang Jinren's supernatural power is indeed extraordinary, but his cultivation is still in the 2nd realm. Let's not talk about whether he can reach that step. Even if he does, it will be a matter of 100 years later. Why worry about it now? Fan Yinghui said, when I came here, I heard that Jinren Zheng has been cultivating for 3,000 years. After he passes away, who in your sect will be the needle of calming sea? Madame Zhao's expression did not change. She said confidently, Sister, you should know that after Xian Yu's death, his Taoist book is in my hands. All the previous flaws can be filled. When that time comes, why would Zhongtai not prosper? Fan Yinghui wanted to say more, but at this moment, she heard a commotion at the foot of the mountain. Madame Zhao had also noticed it. She called for her maid and asked, go and see what is happening down there. This maid was brought by her from Zhongtai. She was not from Hanyuan sect, so she had to go and ask around. After a while, she turned around and said, Madam, it is Zhang Jinren's 2 disciples who have been traveling for more than 10 years. They have returned. Fan Yinghui smiled and said, Sister, you have come at the right time. These 2 Zhang Jinren have returned to the mountain to pay their respects to their masters. This is a good opportunity to ask for their help. Madame Zhao agreed, Sister, you are right. She instructed her maid, go to my jade box and pick a few treasures. Later, come with me to pay a visit to Zhang Jinren's 2 disciples. Dechin Country, Nanwu Mountain. A Taoist with a face full of anxiety was flying around the mountain with a child in his arms. He seemed to be looking for something. After a few rounds, he saw a 7-story tower at the foot of the mountain. There was a colorful glow coming from it, but it was covered by a seal, so it was not very clear. If he did not know the location beforehand, he would not have been able to detect it in the mountains. He was happy and thought to himself, this must be the place that junior brother Feng mentioned. He quickly got down and arrived at the valley. He raised his voice and said, "Is Jinren here? I am Sin Chu from Quantum. Because my child has been infected with poison, I have come to pay my respects and beg Jinren to help me." He repeated this a few times, but there was no response from the mountain. He couldn't help but become anxious. He looked at the child in his arms. His face was purple and his breathing was getting weaker. He couldn't wait any longer. He gritted his teeth and pulled out his sword, wanting to force his way in. However, at this moment, the restrictive formation in front of him suddenly rippled like waves. A moment later, the barrier dispersed, revealing the pagoda inside. He was overjoyed and hurriedly jumped inside. Just a few hundred feet away, he saw a ferocious-looking, green-eyed, yellow-robed Taoist standing in front of him. There was a faint ominous glint in his eyes. He didn't look like a good person. He couldn't help but be startled and subconsciously stopped. He hesitated for a moment before asking, "Are you Master Zhang?" Zhang Boyan looked at the child in his arms and said, "Another one who has been infected with poison. At most, this child will not be able to keep his life." When Sin Chu heard this, he didn't care about anything else and hurriedly said, "As long as Taoist can save my child's life, I will give you a big gift to thank you." Zhang Boyan smiled strangely and used a spell. A yellow smoke rose from the ground and swept the child over. He then turned around and entered the tower. He said, "Wait here. I will send him out in an hour." Sin Chu had a grateful look on his face. He bowed repeatedly and said, "Thank you, Taoist, thank you." Zhang Boyan went into the pagoda, took out a newly refined pill, and fed it into the child's mouth. Then, he infused some spiritual energy into the child. After a short while, the child's mouth and nose spurted out wisps of black foul gas. As the gas came out, his face gradually regained its color. He waved his sleeve and turned the foul gas in the room into a drop of black water. He held it in his palm and carefully sensed it. He thought to himself, this poison is not the gas of the Netherworld River, nor is it the poisonous gas of the Earth Lung. What is hidden under the Quantum? Zhang Yan had found out that the great underworld patriarch's seal was under the Quantum, so he asked Zhang Boyan to come here and watch his every move. But as soon as he arrived, he found that there was a poisonous gas coming out of the area within 100 miles. He was an elder of the Netherworld Spring sect, so he had a deep understanding of the various kinds of dark river gas underground. Normally, the poisonous gas under the earth lung would mostly disperse when it came into contact with the blazing sun. There was no poison like this. Now, other than the area around the Quantum Inn, there were no signs of birds or beasts in the rest of the mountain. Coincidentally, because he wanted to find out what kind of foul gas this was, he saved a passing Quantum Inn half a month ago. But after this incident, the cultivators in the courtyard found out that there was a Taoist master outside the mountain who could cure this poison, so many people came to ask for help. An hour later, he walked out of the tower. He waved his sleeve and sent the child out with the yellow gas. Sin Chu quickly took it and looked down. He saw that the child's breathing was even and he was sleeping soundly. His little face had also regained some color. He couldn't help but let out a big sigh of relief. He smiled gratefully at Zhang Boyan and said, "Thank you for your help, Taoist master." Zhang Boyan said, "May I ask, where did this poisonous miasma come from?" Sin Chu hesitated for a while and said, "You saved my son's life, so you shouldn't hide anything. It's just that this matter involves a secret of our sect, so I don't dare to disclose it to outsiders." Zhang Boyan didn't wait for him to finish and interrupted him with a wave of his hand. He said disdainfully, "I'm not interested in knowing about your sect's matters. It's just that if a normal cultivator breathes in a little bit of this poisonous miasma and isn't cured, his life will be in danger within a day or two. Even if there is a cultivator with a high level of cultivation, after a long time, he still won't be able to withstand it. And from what I see, the poisonous gas is getting worse day by day." If we don't get rid of it, in a few days, you will have to come to beg for help. Senchu was shocked, but after pondering for a while, he raised his head and looked at him with a burning gaze. He said doubtfully, since this poisonous miasma is so powerful, why did Taoist masters stay here and not leave? Zhang Boyan said, what I've refined is special. The extremely poisonous things in the underground are evil medicine to you, but to me, it's a good product for refining qi and refining treasures. Senchu sensed that the qi on his body was obscure, deep and gloomy. It was different from ordinary Xian men, so he immediately believed most of it. He sighed and said, if I could leave, I would have left long ago. Why wait until now? At this point, he thought of something and looked at Zhang Boyan. He said with some expectation, why don't you invite Jinren to my sect? When Zhang Boyan heard this, a few strange green lights appeared in his eyes. He laughed and said, then I'll respectfully accept. Chapter 711. That day the Wang sisters received Zhang Yan's order to return to Donghua. This time they went to Hanyuan and discovered that the inside of the sect, whether it was the topography, the mountains, the temples, the towers, everything had changed greatly compared to the past. Gradually, there were signs of flourishing and flourishing. For a moment there were too many things to take in. At this moment, the news of their return had already spread to the mountain. Not long after, they saw a green-clothed woman walking down from the peak of the mountain. She approached them and said with a smile, I've been separated for more than 30 years. My two senior sisters have finally returned. Wang Kating recognized this woman as Zhao Gu and Jiang Ro. Her beautiful eyes lit up. It's junior sister Jiang. I haven't seen you for a long time. I didn't expect you to have also reached the core transformation realm. Wang Kaiwei also came up, looked at her a few times, and said, congratulations, junior sister. Jiang Ro was embarrassed. She shook her head. I was just lucky. How can I compare to you two sisters? In terms of age, she was older than the Wang sisters by dozens of years. The quality of her core transformation realm was even worse. She felt that she couldn't compare to the two sisters. However, it wasn't that her talent wasn't good. In the past, Hanyuan's sect lacked external cultivation materials, so her cultivation stagnated. Later, when Zhang Yan took over the sect and took back the celestial city, she was able to continue cultivating. Other than her, Xian Chao from the Great Forest sect had also reached the core transformation realm. After the three of them chatted for a while, Wang Kaiwei asked, junior sister, is Master in the sect? Jiang Ro answered, ever since the Dragon Pillar meeting, Master has been in seclusion. He hasn't come out for more than 20 years. After the Wang sisters returned from the sea, they flew to Tsangzhu Peak. They didn't stop to ask for information along the way, so they didn't know the changes in the Dongxing continent. Now that they heard about the Dragon Pillar meeting, Wang Kating was instantly interested. She wanted to ask for more details, but Wang Kaiwei reminded her, sister, come with me to visit Master first. If you have anything to say, ask when you come back. Wang Kating quickly stopped thinking and said seriously, listen to me. Jiang Ro said, the restrictions on the peak have changed a lot. It's different from the past. I'm afraid you two sisters don't know about it. Come with me. The two sisters didn't agree. The three of them carried the clouds and ascended to the peak. Halfway up the mountain, he saw a beautiful woman standing in front of a temple halfway up the mountain. She had a head full of pearls and emerald green hair. Her footsteps were slightly trembling, and her ornaments were jingling. Above her head was a cloud that looked like a golden flower, emitting a strange fragrance. There were dozens of attendants behind her. Wang Kating asked in surprise, junior sister, who is this? Jiang Ro glanced at her and replied, that's Madame Zhao Ru, sect leader Zongtaekyo's Dao companion. After the Dragon Pillar spell assembly, most of the lands in the north of Dongxing will belong to this sect. She's here to invite sect leader to a banquet. Wang Kating rolled her eyes and giggled. She clapped her hands and said, then Master must have helped Zhongtai in the Dragon Pillar battle. Am I right? Jiang Ro nodded, senior sister is right. When the two sisters looked at Madame Zhao, the latter was also looking at the Wang sisters. Seeing the two beauties standing on top of the clouds, riding on the wind with their silk belts fluttering, they looked like fairies. She couldn't help but feel envious. I wonder where Master Zhang found them. These two sisters have good looks and talent. If they were in Zhongtai sect, they would be able to inherit the sect. If I met them earlier, I would have taken them in no matter what. At this moment, in the temple, Fan Ninghui also looked out. She saw the two beautiful ladies with fair skin and deep roots. She couldn't help but think, from this, I can deduce their master. This Master Zhang's background isn't that simple. If he came from an ordinary sect, he wouldn't be able to find such beauties. She previously reminded Madame Zhao to pay more attention to Han Yuan's sect. It wasn't entirely because she wanted to sow discord, but more because she was secretly wary of this sect. She always felt that someone like Zhang Yan must have other plans for setting up his sect in Dongxing State. It wasn't that she was overthinking things. Currently, the Python tribe that occupied the northern sea was a guest from the other continents. Originally, no matter how much the five great sects disagreed with each other, they had unanimously rejected them. If another sect like the Python tribe appeared, the situation in Dongxing would definitely change drastically. Madame Zhao wanted to greet the Wang sisters, but before she could go forward, the two ladies bowed to her from afar and went up the mountain. She was startled. After thinking for a while, she understood the reason. She thought, I was too impatient. After returning to the mountain, the first thing she did was to pay respects to her master. This was etiquette, and she knew it. It was just that she had a high position in Zhongtai sect and everything was up to her heart's desire. Moreover, she was anxious to invite Zhang Yan down the mountain, so she didn't think about this. After thinking for a while, she told the maid beside her, go and find out where the two ladies are staying. I'll send the gifts later. The Wang sisters arrived at the peak in a short while. Jiang Ro couldn't stay here any longer, so she bowed and left. At this time, the cave door opened and Jing Yu walked out. He cupped his hands in greeting and laughed. The two ladies have returned to the mountain. Wang Kating went up and said, did Master say when he will come out of seclusion? Jing Yu shook his head, he didn't mention this. Wang Kaiwei thought for a while before saying, Sister, today is a rush, so the two of us will first pay our respects at the door. After burning incense and bathing tomorrow, we will come and pay respects to Master. Wang Kating made a sound of agreement and happily agreed. Just as the two of them were about to salute, they heard a rumbling sound in the cave as if a door had been opened. A clear voice came from inside, Kaiwei, Kating, since you've returned to the mountain, come in. Wang Kating let out a soft cry and happily said, Master has come out of seclusion. Wang Kaiwei pulled her and shook her head lightly, reminding her not to be rude. The two sisters tidied up their clothes and entered the cave. They had only taken a few steps when they saw a misty fog in front of them and heard the sound of wind. They didn't know why, but they suddenly felt that danger was everywhere and the murderous intent was biting cold. They couldn't help but be shocked and stopped their footsteps. At this time, they heard Zhang Yan's voice transmission, this is a new cave protection array that I've refined a month ago. It's not complete yet, so it's inconvenient to remove it. The two of you can go ahead and you'll be safe. The two of them obeyed and walked for 100 steps. The fog suddenly disappeared and they found themselves in a spacious cave hall. Looking up, they saw Zhang Yan sitting upright on the jade couch. His demeanor was clear and his eyes were filled with spiritual light. Above his head were 3 clouds that were sometimes separated and sometimes closed. It was like a mist or a sunset, dazzling with 5 different colors. There was also a sign of surging and surging, totally different from other third-degree realm cultivators. The Wang sisters hurriedly went forward and kowtowed, disciple greets master. Zhang Yan said with a smile, get up. I see that the 2 of your cultivations have improved greatly and there are other changes in the evil pill. Did you have some fortuitous encounter? The Wang sisters looked at each other but didn't get up. Wang Kaiwei said, when the two of us went there, we met Clearfeather's sect's Taoist Wang on the East Sea and went there to have a seat. We didn't expect to meet Tao Xinren on this trip. Reverend said that we sisters might not be able to return for 20 to 30 years, so we each imparted a divine ability to us and wanted us to cultivate for a period of time. It won't be too late to go after that. Saying that, she bowed down again and said, disciple didn't get permission from the sect and secretly cultivated another sect's divine ability. May Master punish me. But the person who made the decision is me and it has nothing to do with Kading. When Wang Kading heard that, she instantly panicked and said, Sister, how can you say that? The divine ability is learned together, so we should punish together. Wang Kaiwei stared at her and said softly, don't mess around. In reality, no matter if it was Qinsang school or Zhang Yan's Xiaoyu sect, they didn't forbid the divine ability of other sections. However, she faintly felt that Tao Xinren seemed to have an ulterior motive and seemed to be plotting something. However, when faced with a divine ability given by a heavenly abode, they couldn't reject it. Under the circumstances, they could only accept it. Zhang Yan knew that Tao Xinren was good at calculating and setting up formations. It wasn't surprising that he had a way to see if the two of them were going smoothly. However, at Tao Xinren's realm, he wouldn't do things without a reason. There must be a deeper meaning behind his action. He pondered for a while and guessed the reason. He couldn't help but smile. Back when he helped Tao Xinren to achieve heavenly abode on the sea, the latter promised to help him with 3 things. In Zhang Yan's opinion, a favor from a heavenly abode shouldn't be used on small matters, so he never asked for it. However, as his cultivation improved day by day, Donghua continent faced another calamity. If he needed a heavenly abode's help, even Tao Xinren wouldn't be able to bear the responsibility. Therefore, he gave a divine ability to the Wang sisters for free. It was also an excuse to remind him that some favors should be used when needed. He looked at the Wang sisters and said with a smile, when did I say that I would punish the two of you? Get up. Tao Xinren was able to establish his own sect and become the founder of that sect. The divine ability he taught is definitely not bad. The two of you just need to practice it well. However, you need to remember that cultivation is the foundation of achieving Tao. The Wang sisters saw that their master's expression was normal and his tone was friendly. They guessed that this matter didn't violate any taboo, so they finally let go of this matter and got up. Wang Kaiwei carefully took out a wooden box from the sachet and placed it on her palm. She took a few steps forward and placed it on the jade table in front of Zhang Yan. She said, Master, this is the item that the two of us took from Guangyuan sect. When we left, Elder Shen solemnly told us that this item was very important and that we had to hand it to you personally. Zhang Yan's gaze shifted downwards and landed on the wooden box, revealing a solemn expression. Then, he extended his hand and opened the lid, revealing the contents inside. On the top layer was a letter. It was written that it was for him personally, and it was signed by Shen Yinfeng of Guangyuan sect. Zhang Yan took the letter and opened it. In the letter, it was Elder Shen's own narration. He mainly wrote that after the 16 sects battle, he borrowed Jun Yang's essence to help him cultivate in seclusion. He originally thought that he would only need 30 years of intensive cultivation to reach the 3rd stage. However, he didn't expect that he would need 20 more years to succeed. Then, he used the Yuanying Dharma body to go deep into the underground palace and found the remains left behind by Shinchong after his ascension. He found the 2 missing talisman techniques, and other than that, there was another item. Zhang Yan put the letter aside and reached out his hand. He slowly picked up an inconspicuous thin book in the box. On it were 4 words, Shinchong's legacy. Shinchong moved unhindered in the 9 states and rarely met a worthy opponent. In the end, he relied on a golden talisman to ascend. This was the notes he left behind before he left. Zhang Yan was deeply moved. When he asked for this item from Elder Shen, he only mentioned it as a test. He didn't expect that Guangyuan sect would really have it. How precious was the notes left behind by a mighty person who had ascended. Even though there were a few mighty people in Qinsang school who had ascended, he wasn't their direct disciple and hadn't cultivated to that level. Hence, it wasn't his turn to look at it. He had always believed that everything should be done in advance. If one didn't plan beforehand, it would be useless. It was already too late for him to plan when things came to a head. Moreover, when the 3 great tribulations came, all cultivators would be in the tribulations. No one could predict what would happen in the future. It was definitely not a bad thing to be able to take a look at the mysteries within. Looking at the thin book in his hand, he held his breath and slowly flipped the pages. Chapter 7:12. Zhang Yan flipped open the book and looked at it. The first few pages were Shinchong's rough description. Shinchong started cultivating when he was in his teens. At the age of 46, he condensed a second-grade golden core. At the age of 200, he cultivated yuanying. At the age of 712, he formed a grotto heaven. He was different from his peers. For the next 2,000 years, he spent most of his time traveling outside. It was only when he was about to ascend that he returned to the sect and wrote this book. In just a few hundred words, an ascended Jinren's entire life of cultivation was presented in front of his eyes. Maybe it was because this book was left for the juniors in the sect to study. The part about how he formed a grotto heaven was written in great detail. What was even rarer was that at the bottom, there were several methods of forming a grotto heaven that he knew and listed out the pros and cons of each method. After Zhang Yan read it, he felt that he had benefited a lot. But when he continued to read, there were dozens of pages that were blank. He put down the book and thought about the mysteries within. He thought that his cultivation wasn't good enough and he couldn't see through it. But it wasn't that he wasn't anxious. With this book in his hands, he could slowly comprehend it in the future. He placed the book back into the wooden box and with a wave of his sleeve, he kept it in his bag. After tidying up the scroll, he muttered to himself for a moment, raised his finger and pointed in the air, condensed his chi to draw the talisman, then with another push, the talisman passed through the air into the hands of the Wang sisters, saying, "The 2 of you have done very well this time. This method was derived by me using the 9 mysterious scriptures. The first person to receive this teaching is only Yan Yi. Now I will pass it to the 2 of you." Breaking the shell wasn't difficult, but it wasn't easy either. The Wang sisters' Dan had reached the 4th grade, and the previous method of breaking the shell was obtained by Zhang Yan from the Jingluo courtyard. However, this method was derived from the remnant jade, and there were many more variations. The 2 sisters were delighted to receive this method. After they received it, they carefully experienced it and understood the variations within. They understood that if they could calm down and practice this method, breaking the Dan acupoint would be a piece of cake. They thanked him. "Thank you, benefactor, for giving us this method." Zhang Yan smiled and nodded. "Go back and study it well. When it's time to hatch, Master will protect the 2 of you." The 2 sisters nodded in agreement, bowed, and retreated. After the 2 left, Zhang Yan called Jingyu over and said, "Is there a guest in the sect?" Jingyu replied, "Master, Zhongtai sect has recently chased Chunyu Ji and the others to the sea. The north of Dongsheng is now dominated by this sect. To celebrate, they are holding a banquet to entertain cultivators from other sections. The people from the foot of the mountain are here to invite Master to attend the banquet." Zhang Yan asked again, "Which ones came?" Jingyu answered, "There are 2 of them. Zhao Ru and her eldest son, Du Shixuan, also came with them." Zhang Yan shook his head slightly and said, "No, I saw 3 strong auras at the foot of the mountain. Besides Madame Zhao and Jinren Du, there should be another person." Jingyu hurriedly said, "Xiao Tong will try to find out later." Zhang Yan waved his hand. "There's no need." He closed his eyes and silently sensed. As his cultivation became more profound, he could detect the auras within a few miles of himself if he carefully observed. If he could cultivate to the 3rd level, no matter who it was, as long as their cultivation was lower than his, once they entered the range of the heaven and earth lock, he could immediately detect them. Madame Zhao and Du Shixuan's auras were needless to say. One was as gorgeous as a flower with a hidden meaning, while the other was strong and brave with unparalleled strength. He could tell. On the other hand, the aura of the 3rd person was thought-provoking. It was strange, erratic, and difficult to fathom. It wasn't someone he was familiar with, yet it just so happened that it was slightly familiar. He thought about it again and suddenly remembered that this person was very similar to Xiao Zhongxiang, who was defeated by him. Once he thought about this person's background, he could roughly guess this person's origin. His eyes flickered slightly and he asked, Jingyu, has anything unusual happened in Dongxing State recently? Jingyu touched his head and thought about it. He raised his head and said, Master, there is one. It is said that the Dragon Pillar's prohibition is gradually disappearing, revealing a stone mansion below. Zhongtai wanted to monopolize it, but the three sects also wanted to dip their hands in it. They refused no matter what, so the three sects are in a deadlock. Until now, they have not found out what exactly is inside. After listening to this news, Zhang Yan thought about the cause and effect and roughly guessed the purpose of Madame Zhao's visit. It was not as simple as attending a banquet. He smiled and said, those who come are guests. Jingyu, go and tell them that I am hosting a banquet tonight to entertain the three Daoist friends. Dongxing South State, Dachin State, Quantum. The magical treasure, Yongming Well, was placed in the middle of the main hall, and the four Yuanying cultivators of the sect were sitting around it. Chancellor Go Su-min's expression was grave. Looking at the three pavilion masters in front of her, she said, in these days, the number of disciples in the sect who have been poisoned by the miasma has increased. Yesterday, there were 3 Ming Qi disciples who died from the poison. Although the cultivation of these disciples is not high, they are the foundation of our sect. My heart aches for them to die in vain like this. Today, I have invited the 3 senior brothers here to discuss how to deal with the crisis in front of us. Although he said this, his eyes were looking at the person sitting in front of him. This person's face was pale and beardless, and he looked to be in his 70s. He wore a large gray feather robe and held a golden bell bamboo cane in his hand. On his shoulder was a one-horned demon frog, and he had an indifferent expression on his face. Seeing that Go Su-min was looking at him, he raised his eyelids and turned his body to the side. In a bland tone, he said, Junior brother, you don't need to look at me. What ideas can I have? Go Su-min said, Senior brother Tseng must be joking. Who doesn't know that you have refined pills in the golden grain pool for hundreds of years and have refined 10 cauldrons of suspending yang pills? They can protect one's life and qi, and resist external evils. It shouldn't be difficult to give some to the disciples in the sect, right? Daoren Tseng laughed dryly. I have worked hard for more than 300 years, and this is all I have. Junior brother, why are you thinking about it? If you are talking about promoting cultivation and healing injuries, I can be of some help. But curing the miasma is not my forte. Junior brother, you have found the wrong person. Go Su-min was not willing to let him go just like that. She said, if that's the case, then let's not talk about curing the miasma. Junior brother will ask for some face from you. Lend me a cauldron of suspending yang pills. How about that? Tseng Doran's face stiffened. He said unwillingly, my 10 cauldrons of pills may seem like a lot, but I still have to distribute them to the disciples and a few of my colleagues. I don't have much left. Without waiting for Go Su-min to speak, he turned his head and looked at Sun Chu, who was sitting on the east seat. He said, Junior brother Shen, I heard that you have invited an expert in this field. Sun Chu said honestly, yes. If it wasn't for Zhang, the consequences would be unimaginable. That's right, Tseng Daoren hit the ground with his bamboo stick. His voice suddenly rose a few octaves. With this person here, I, Daoren, don't need to embarrass myself. It just so happens that I still have matters to attend to in the Golden Pool. I won't be chatting with you junior brothers. Goodbye, goodbye. He cupped his hands and stood up. He hurriedly stirred up a gust of strong wind and spun out of the hall. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared without a trace. Go Su-min sighed. She pointed outside the hall and said, he is also the son of master and the pavilion master of the sect. But how can he be so selfish? He doesn't care about the life and death of the sect's disciples. She then waved her hand and said, forget it. We can't count on him. Junior brother Shen, about that poisonous miasma, what did Zhang said? Senchu's expression turned serious. He said, Jinren said that this poisonous miasma is a mixture of the local poison and a strange poison. But he doesn't know what kind of poison it is. If the junior disciples breathe in a little, if they are not treated, their lives will be in danger within a day or two. Even if we are Yuaniing cultivators, after a long time, the poison will infect our bodies and meridians. Even we, the Yuaniing cultivators, after a long time, the poison will infect our bodies and meridians. At the moment, he can still find a way to detoxify the poison. But when the time comes, I'm afraid he won't be able to do anything. Go Su-min was shocked. She said, this poisonous miasma is so powerful. Senchu said, this matter can't be faked. There is no need for Zhang to lie to us. Go Su-min calmed herself down. She said, it's a pity that Daoist Zhang is not from Quantumin. Oh yes, junior brother, you must think of a way to keep him. Senchu nodded. He said, I will do my best. But the antidote Zhang didn't come from nowhere. It needs to be refined with spiritual medicine. Currently, I don't have much left. Go Su-min said, I will do my best in Quantumin. I will give you as much as you have. Quantumin's strength was considered one of the best in Fengxiang Sword School. There were 4 Yuaniing Jinren in the school. They occupied 3 immortal cities. Of course, they had the confidence to say this. Shen Chuyu, however, was still in a difficult position. But concocting pills takes time. It would take at least a month to concoct 1 cauldron, and a cauldron would only produce 30 or so pills. There are thousands of disciples in my institute. How could we take care of them all? Go Su-min asked, Junior brother, can you ask Jinren to give up the prescription? After a pause, she added, Quantumin won't take it for nothing. We can exchange it with Dharma treasures and spiritual items. We can even discuss techniques. Before Senchu said anything, the pavilion master sitting on the west side said, Chancellor, this method doesn't solve the root of the problem. If we want to eradicate this poison, we can't touch the seal anymore. Go Su-min said, I have the same intention. But it is the order of the sect. We have to do it. The pavilion master said, then senior brother can move the disciples out. Only the few of us will stay here to guard the place. We don't want to implicate the juniors. Go Su-min frowned. To be honest, he had considered moving the disciples away. But in reality, he couldn't do it. Ever since the seal was broken, to prevent the news from leaking, all the disciples were under the strict supervision of Fengxiang Sword School. None of them could leave as they wished. To prevent them from disobeying, an elder came to check on them every month. The pavilion master said, I have an idea. Since the poison is so poisonous, why don't we exaggerate the number of disciples who died? Every month, when you are not around, we can try to move a few disciples away. Are you going to check on them one by one? Go Su-min thought about it. He was tempted. He asked, then, where can we send those disciples? The pavilion master said, we can try to send them to a few sects we are on good terms with. Before he finished, Go Su-min shook his head. He said, that's not right. If someone reports to the sect in private, the consequences will be dire. Chapter 713. Although Senchu felt that asking Zhang Boyan to solve this problem was very feasible, whether it would succeed or not still depended on Zhang Boyan's willingness. After coming out of the main hall, he went to the pill room hidden in the belly of the mountain. This place was now lent to Zhang Boyan to concoct pills. When he entered the room, a gust of hot air hit him in the face. Dozens of disciples were sitting in front of the pill furnace, using their mana to ignite the earth fire. Due to the hot air, steam rose from their heads. Zhang Boyan was sitting in a high-hanging hut, controlling everyone's mana to adjust the fire at any time so that the pills wouldn't be damaged. At this moment, when these disciples saw the pavilion master enter, they subconsciously stood up to greet him. Zhang Boyan's expression darkened and he shouted, "Who told you to stop?" Ever since he arrived, he had taught those who didn't obey his orders a lesson. After interacting with him for so many days, these disciples were already afraid of him. Now that they heard him speak, they all obediently stopped moving. When Senchu saw that this furnace of pills had reached a critical juncture, he realized that he came at the wrong time. He didn't dare to disturb them, so he went to the side and waited. About an hour later, the furnace of pills was finished. The dozens of disciples had exhausted their mana, but they still forced themselves to sit up, swallowed spiritual medicine, and meditated to adjust their breathing. Fortunately, they would be able to use their strength again the next time they concocted pills. Even though they were tired, by concocting pills here, they could obtain antidote pills in advance. This was better than losing their lives, so no matter how tired they were, no one was willing to leave. Zhang Boyan suppressed the fire and slowly walked down the hanging hut. He ignored Senchu and sat on the couch, closing his eyes to adjust his breathing. After another 2 hours, he finished adjusting his breathing and opened his eyes, saying, "Fellow Taoist Shin just delivered the spiritual medicine yesterday, why are you here again today?" Senchu cupped his hands, saying, "I came here today because I have something to trouble you with." Zhang Boyan snorted, saying, "That depends on what it is." Shen Chuyu made a hand seal, an array of light separated the two of them. Then, he told them why he came. He bowed and said, "Now, the only one who can save the disciples of Guantan Monastery is you, Dao brother." After Zhang Boyan heard this, he began to plan in his heart. His goal in coming here was to keep an eye on the restrictive spell at all times. If anything happened here, he would be able to notify Zhang Yan in time, and he would be able to cure the poison for his disciples. He didn't expect that Zhang Yan would suddenly ask him to take care of his disciples. He thought to himself, Guantan Yard is a lower sect of the Fengxiang sword sect. Even if the manor head were to come here, he would need to find an excuse. Since they took the initiative to send their disciples here, this is exactly what I wanted. Seeing him refuse, Senchu sighed and said, "Zhang, as you can see, my quantum yin is suffering from this poison and the lives of my disciples are in danger. Since Zhang Yan took the initiative to send his disciples here, I can't ask for more." Shen Chuyu sighed and said, "Fellow Taoist Zhang, as you can see, my Guantan courtyard is suffering from this poisonous miasma, and the lives of our disciples are in danger. It's not an exaggeration to say that we're in a precarious situation. As long as fellow Taoist can agree to this, you can take whatever we have in our courtyard." Zhang Boyan pretended to be hesitant. After a long time, he said as if he was in a difficult position, "It's not that I don't want to help you, but how can I save all of your disciples? Are you going to move all of your disciples to my sect?" Senchu looked at him with his eyes wide open. After a while, he bowed deeply and said, "If it's really possible, my sect will remember your great kindness." Zhang Boyan dodged to the side and sneered, "Great kindness? If I help you, Quantumin's crisis will be solved, but Fengxiang Sword School will come looking for me. What's the use of your great kindness?" Shen Chuyu was stunned for a moment before he said, "As long as we keep this a secret, who would know that it was fellow Taoist Zhang who did it? If the news is really leaked," he straightened up and said seriously, "then you can push this matter to me in Quantum Inn, so that you won't be implicated." Zhang Boyan chuckled and said, "Words are no proof. We need the monastery head to personally sign the edict." Senchu saw that his tone was relaxed and was delighted. Good, it should be so. This matter is easy, I will get the edict for you right now." He was afraid that Zhang Boyan would go back on his word, so as soon as he finished speaking, he immediately rushed out. Because he was in such a hurry, he didn't have time to retract the spiritual light he had just set up, so he crashed into it. Zhang Boyan's gaze was deep and a strange smile appeared on his face. As long as he could get the edict, then he would have the status to act in the future. Senchu left the alchemy room and hurried to the main hall. At this moment, a disciple ran in anxiously and said, Master, the ambassador from Fengxiang Sword School is here." Senchu was shocked and stopped. "It's not time yet, why is he here?" "Did you see who it was?" The disciple said, "I saw him, it's Shang Junqing, Jinren Shang." Senchu's body trembled. Shang Junqing was the sword master of Fengxiang Sword School's absolute light sword. This person was arrogant and unruly, the most difficult to provoke. Furthermore, he loved luxury and beauties. In the past, when it came to this matter, the whole of Quantum was tormented unspeakably. He took a breath and calmed his mind. Where is the ambassador? The disciple said, he has reached the main hall. The chancellor personally went to welcome him. Tell master to quickly go over. Senchu's thoughts turned a few times. Since this person was already here, he could only deal with him properly. He walked towards the main hall with apprehension. Not long after, he arrived at the main hall. Just as he entered, he saw that Chancellor Go Su-min and another pavilion master had already arrived. A young cultivator was sitting on the main seat, holding a wine pot and drinking by himself. This person was tall and handsome, but his eyebrows were like sharp swords. When he looked around, he gave off an overbearing and sharp aura. Senchu quickly took a few steps forward and bowed. Welcome, ambassador. Shang Juanqing's gaze swept over, and he casually threw the wine pot away, saying coldly, Jinren Shen, why are you late? Senchu hurriedly said, just now in the alchemy room refining medicine, I didn't know that ambassador would come. Shang Junqing glanced at both sides again, saying, where's Senguizhi? Why don't I see him? Senchu said, senior apprentice brother is refining medicine in the golden pool. Shang Junqing mocked, you are refining medicine, he is also refining medicine. Could it be that Quantum has become the lower house of Ku Xian sect? Senchu smiled bitterly, ambassador, please allow me to report. Recently, there has been a lot of poisonous miasma in the sect, and it has harmed many disciples. I have no choice but to refine medicine to protect myself. Shang Junqing untied the magic sword from his waist and placed it on the table. He said coldly, when I was in the mountain gate, I heard that you and the others made a mistake here, which caused the matter of breaking the prohibition to be delayed. Is this true? Go Su-min cupped his hands and said, Ambassador, there is poisonous miasma under the seal. In just half a month, more than 10 disciples have lost their lives, which is why we have no choice but to do this. I hope that Ambassador will have mercy and forgive us for a month, so that we can save our disciples. Shang Junqing looked at him from the corner of his eyes, saying, aren't you all refining the antidote? Since there is a good prescription, why stop? Senchu said, Ambassador, you may not know this, but refining a cauldron of pills takes a month, and a cauldron of medicine only. Before he could finish, Shang Junqing interrupted, don't tell me about this, I don't care what you do. The sect master has ordered that at the end of the year, Quantum needs to break the seal. If you fail, you will be the one to blame. Having said that, he stood up and walked out. Zhong Tai's celebratory banquet has been set for next month. Qin Yuan wants to attend the banquet personally, and the seal on Quantum is equally important. Fearing that there is no one watching over this place, it would not be appropriate for there to be any mistakes, so he was sent here to watch over it. As for the disciple's life in Quantum, if it was Fan Yinghui, he might try to buy the disciple's heart, but he did not care at all. It was not a disciple of his sect. If he died, then he died. What does it have to do with him? Looking at his expression, Go Su-min knows that there is no way he can refuse. He can't help but sigh in his heart. Shang Junqing has no intention of helping, which made him even more certain of his previous thoughts, but in reality, he is more worried that Fengxiang Sword School, in order to hide the news, forced Quantum to this state. If they wait until the seal is broken, who knows what they will do? No matter what, he has to find a way to send the disciple elsewhere. If something happens, it will not be the end of the orthodoxy. Senchu looked outside the hall and set up a seal to isolate the inside from the outside. He then said, Monastery head, little brother Fang Chang has discussed with Zhang Zhang. He has already agreed, but he is afraid that if he helps Quantum Fengxiang will be angry at him, so he needs the monastery head to write a letter personally. Go Su-min heard this and her spirit was slightly lifted. She nodded and said, I will write the letter later, but since Shang Junqing is here, this matter needs to be extra careful. In the barren hills west of Deyang City, a golden light flew up. circling around the mountain ridges, a figure flashed below. Chu Changji came out from the cave. With a light beckon, he took it into his hands, opened it and read it. Instantly his face was filled with joy. He turned back to the cave and walked quickly. He said, "Teacher, Zhao Ru's letter has arrived." Hui Xian elder was in the cave residence drinking tea and discussing Dao with Ji Daoren. Seeing him come in, he put down the teacup and took the letter. His eyes lit up when he saw him come in. After a moment of hesitation, he folded the letter and kept it in his sleeve. He then turned to Ji Daoren and said, "Zhao Ru said that she has already invited Priest Zhang down the mountain. The banquet will be on the 3rd of next month. At that time, the heads of the 3 sects of South Continent will also come personally." Ji Daoren looked at him and sneered, "Let me say this first, I will not fight with Priest Zhang before I get the thing." Hui Xian elder said in a deep voice, "This is what I promised you previously. Naturally I will not go back on it. Moreover, since this person has come out of seclusion, my previous arrangements can also continue. This time after we get the thing in the cave residence, you and I will leave immediately. After that we will find an opportunity to deal with this person." Ji Daoren revealed a satisfied look and said, "It is just that Xiao Huanzhuan dared to let you steal this thing. He will not have a backup plan. It is extremely possible that he will burn the bridge after crossing the river. Have you thought of how to deal with him?" Hui Xian old ancestor chuckled and said, "That stratagem was also given by me. How can I not be on guard?" Ji Daoren made an "oh" sound, looked sideways and said, "I would like to hear the details." Hui Xian elder sneered, "This time Xiao Huanzhuan invited me to fight. His intention is to clear his name, but how can I do as he wishes? This time I want to call another person along. After the matter, he will definitely be unable to explain himself, then see how he will deal with the 3 sects of South Continent." When Ji Daoren heard that there was suddenly another person, he unconsciously frowned and looked at him suspiciously, said, "Who?" Hui Xian elder faintly said, "Xiao Huanzhuan's concubine, Lian Murong." Chapter 714. On the 3rd day of the 9th month, the Zhongtai sect held a banquet at the southwest Dragon Pillar, inviting the Dongxing sections. After the Ku Xian sect received the invitation, the sect leader, He Yizhu, selected over 100 disciples and elders. They boarded the flying disc cloud boat and departed from the Wu Kingdom in the southwest, heading north. After 20 days, they arrived at the side of the raging Great Chuan River. The Great Chuan River flowed from west to east, intersecting with the other 4 great rivers at the midstream umbilicus. Together, they were known as the 5 Dragon Rivers. Its shape was just like the word great, dividing the Dongxing continent into 5, and the world structure was thus formed. The water of the Dachuan River flowed rapidly. In the middle of the river, there were black reefs densely covering the entire river. If one looked closely, they would be able to tell that they weren't rocks, but huge, strange turtles. They stood at the bottom of the river, their bodies like millstones. Only their black shells were exposed to the surface of the river, absorbing the essence of the sun and the moon. There were thousands of them. Among them, there were 10 of them that were especially huge. When they raised their heads, they were almost as big as a mountain. They were facing the sun and spitting out smoke. An elder who was leading the way raised his hand and signaled for them to stop. He cautiously said, "Disciples behind, be careful. Follow the elders when crossing the river. Don't become food for the monster turtles." Everyone agreed in unison. These monster turtles usually lived in the river. As long as there were cultivators crossing the river, they would try to swallow them. Other than the Yuanying cultivators who could travel above the sky and hide from them, the rest could only cross the river during the 2 to 4 hours when the turtles entered the water to rest. Even so, if they weren't careful, they would still be killed. It wasn't that the 5 sects didn't want to eliminate them, but it wasn't in their territory after all. The cultivators who went there didn't have the heart to help. Moreover, the monster turtles' shells were sturdy. Normal weapons couldn't break them. Even if they couldn't defeat the cultivators, they could hide deep in the river. Normal methods couldn't take them. The 10 monster turtles were even more powerful. They could almost fight with the Yuanying cultivators. The people of the Ku Xian sect didn't want to provoke them, so they carefully avoided them. It took them half a day to cross the river just now. As soon as they reached the other side of the river, a disciple pointed downwards and said, "There are already Zhongtai disciples waiting by the river." "Oh," the leading elder replied. He said, unexpectedly he came all the way to the riverbank. Sect leader Qiao is very considerate. At first, he didn't think much of it, but after traveling for another 10 days, he was moved. In the past few days, they had traveled tens of thousands of miles, but there was only one pavilion every 10 miles. There was a jug of wine every 100 li. A hill of 1,000 li. Every 1,000 li, there would be 1,000 pearls piled up into a pagoda on top of the hill. It gave off a dazzling radiance. On the two sides of the path, there were golden boats sailing from time to time. On every single boat, there were beautiful maidservants in colorful clothes standing at the bow of the boat, pouring water and wine into the dry ditches to converge into a river. There were also demon carps with pearls in their mouths, swimming leisurely. From time to time, a maidservant would throw down bait and swallow it. The pearls in their stomachs would shine, and stars would be faintly discernible in the transparent water. At night, the ground would shine, and the water would be like a river of stars. It really made the mountains and rivers look beautiful, and the scenery was endless. The disciples of the Ku Xian sect were all astonished. From here to the southwest Dragon Pillar, there were at least 10,000 miles of land. If all the roads along the way were decorated like this, a rough calculation would take up at least 20 to 30 immortal cities. The number of immortal cities owned by each of the 3 major sects of the South Continent was about the same. However, Zhongtai was different. After obtaining the wealth of Xianyu sect, they had close to 100 celestial cities in their hands. Although they had to pay a lot, it wasn't a huge blow. It could be said that they were very powerful. Thinking about this, everyone felt their hearts tremble. The elder looked at it and frowned. After thinking for a while, he flew towards a jade plate in the sky that was a few miles wide. This plate was called the Four Seas Jade Plate. There were mountains and water on the plate, forming a beautiful and blessed land. The sect master, Heizhu, was lying on a green peak. He looked to be around 40 years old. He wore a deep robe and a wide belt, and his sleeves were spread out like wings. His entire person was restrained, and his essence was restrained. He looked ordinary. Other than the clothes on his body, he didn't look like a cultivator. After the elder arrived, he explained the situation below and cupped his hands. "Sect master, Zhongtai has clearly set up such a formation for us to see. It's not without the intention of showing off." When Heizhu heard the report, he smiled and said, "The formation is indeed not small. If they do this, won't they have to send out thousands of disciples? Is there no one left in Zhongtai sect?" He changed his mind and waved his hand to call a disciple over. He said, "Go and find out where those people came from." The disciple took the order and left. Not long after, he turned back and said, "Sect master, I have already asked. Most of the people below were originally from Xianyu sect. This welcoming and sending off is mostly done by them." Heizhu smiled and said to the dozen disciples on both sides, "When I came here, I have said that these two sects have been at odds for thousands of years. Although they are now one, how can the hatred that has accumulated for thousands of years be eliminated so easily? Now Zhongtai sect seems to be strong, but it's actually filled with hidden problems. It's like a 1,000-year-old tree that looks thick and strong, but it's actually big and empty. There's nothing to be afraid of." The disciples all nodded in agreement. The elder didn't say anything, but he understood that these words were just to boost the morale of his own sect. In Dongxing continent, if a sect had a heavenly abode master, it would be able to stand tall. There were only 2 key factors to evaluate whether the sect was strong or not. One was the size of the celestial city, and the other was the techniques and supernatural powers. The orthodoxy of Zhongtai was passed down by the Great Master Dami. Even though the Great Master only served a boy by his side and did not inherit the teachings completely, it was still much better than the other sections. The only one in the continent that could compare to it was the Shaotsung Jing. Now that Zhongtai obtained Xian Yu's techniques, who knew what it would become in a few hundred years? The reason why the three sects wanted to get their hands on the dragon pillar wasn't entirely because of the hidden treasure below. It was because they heard that there was a personal letter from Grand Master Dami inside. If Zhongtai obtained it and created a heavenly abode master, it would be able to maintain its prosperity for another 2,000 years. If there were no accidents, it would definitely be able to suppress the three sects of the South Continent. Therefore, they tried to prevent it from succeeding. At this moment, a disciple came up and cupped his fists. "Sect Master, there are about 10 people approaching us from behind. They seem to be the cultivators from Qing Xian sect." He Yizhu smiled. "Mao Daoren is here too." He patted lightly and the jade couch under him flew up. In the blink of an eye, he was outside. He looked up and saw that there was a group of people coming from more than 10 miles away. The person at the front was wearing an 8-beam crown, an elm robe, and a pair of green cloud shoes. His facial features were squeezed together, making him look funny. He was riding on a large sparrow with flower feathers. It was Mao Wuwei, the sect master of Qing Xian sect. Behind him were the three sages of the sect, Jinren Qing, Jinren Shancheng, and Jinren Chun Bai. Their clothes were full of stains as if they hadn't been washed for many years. They were all riding on a bald dove. Including the accompanying disciples, there were only about 10 people. They all looked listless and extremely shabby. Compared to Ku Xian sect, it was a tragic sight. He Yizhu looked at this scene and couldn't help but laugh. He said from afar, "Sect Master Mao, I didn't want to meet you here. My place is spacious and can accommodate a few more people. It can also shelter me from the wind and rain. Why don't you come up and join us?" There was a hint of ridicule in his words, but Mao Wuwei exclaimed and said, "Since he Zhangmen is so kind, Daoren will be thick-skinned for once." Although he said so, he didn't look embarrassed at all. The three Jinren behind him also gladly followed. The cultivators of Qing Xian sect never cared about face and etiquette. They only cared about practical benefits. Since they could save their own energy, why not? These people came up to the jade plate together. Mao Wuwei was the first to land. After he came down, the large sparrow flapped its wings and turned into a beautiful woman with red makeup. She seemed to be a little shy. She lowered her head and followed him step by step. He Yizhu waved her sleeves and ordered the disciples to go and greet them. After Mao Wuwei sat down, he saw a lot of delicacies and wine on the table. He didn't care about his status as the head of the sect. He grabbed a big goose covered in honey and took a big bite. After a few bites, he raised his head and stared at the disciples next to him. He said vaguely, "What are you waiting for? If you're fast, you'll get it. If you're slow, you won't get it. If you don't act now, it'll all benefit me, Daoren." When the three elders heard what he said, they fought to be the first to sit down. It was as if they were afraid that he would finish eating, so they started to wolf down the food. The disciples behind them also followed suit. The disciples of the Ku Xian sect were all stunned. He Yizhu said sarcastically, "Sect Master Mao, your Taoist robe is so fresh. Don't tell me you just changed." Mao Wuwei laughed and slapped the table. He said to the three elders behind him, "Daoren, how was it? How was it?" I knew he Zhangmen would ask this question. "Give me the money, give me the money." The three Zenrens looked at each other speechlessly. They each took out a box of spiritual shells from their sleeves and obediently handed it to Mao Wuwei. However, when it was the pure white Jinren's turn, he looked very pained. He said with a sad face, "Senior Marshal Brother, can you leave some for me to use as money for my coffin?" Mao Wuwei sneered. He stretched out his hand and mercilessly snatched the box. Then he wiped his mouth and said to He Yizhu proudly, "I'll let He Zhangmen know that Doran's robe isn't new." He took off his robe and opened it, revealing a thick layer of grease. He fanned himself a few times, and there was a fishy smell that made people cover their noses. He laughed and said, "How is it? It's just a change of inside and outside. It's still the same robe that you and I wore when we played chess 30 years ago." He Zhangmen didn't expect this, right? He Yizhu's expression was slightly stiff. At this moment, he secretly regretted that he knew Doran's temperament, but he still invited him up. He really deserved it. The people from the Qing Xian sect ate for a whole day and night. They ate until the table was filled with a mountain of food. Only then did they slow down. Mao Wuwei rubbed his belly with satisfaction, which hadn't changed much. He glanced around and saw a disciple who was still eating. He went up to him and gave him a slap. He said resentfully, "Eat, eat, eat. With your cultivation, how much can you eat? This is just a cushion. There will be a big feast later. Don't eat too much." Only then did the disciple put down the plate reluctantly. He Yizhu saw that they stopped and was finally relieved. He coughed and said, "It's already so late, why don't I see sect leader Chen? I wonder if sect leader Mao saw him when he came." Mao Wuwei burped and took a bamboo stick over. He picked his teeth and said, "Fellow Taoist, don't forget that Madame Zhao graduated from Fengxiang Sword School. The two families are old friends. I'm afraid she has already arrived one step ahead of us." He Yizhu's heart suddenly tightened when he heard this news. They said that they were going to attend the feast, but in fact, it was about the dragon pillar. If the three families advanced and retreated together, it would be fine. They could most likely force Zhongtai to give in. However, if they were roped in by one family, it would be bad.